Part 93. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 955. The visitor was none other than Zhang Yishan, who was facing the siege of the heroes at Hutu Mountain. If Su Tong had not intervened and turned the situation upside down, causing Feng Tianhua to fall out with Dizhou on the spot, I am afraid this person would have been buried. Hutu Mountain is here. Although people all over the world are now criticizing the Yuankai God sect and covering up the news that Zhang Yishan is carrying a huge treasure, this matter cannot be covered up for long. As the saying goes, it is never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. It doesn't matter if the Yuankai divine sect is at odds with the sects in the world. They rely on the northern barbarians and their own sect's fortune to grow with the help of the northern barbarians. With masters like Dizhou sitting in charge, it's not that easy to take revenge. In contrast, the important treasure is something that is just around the corner. Once the treasure in Zhang Yishan's hands is captured, revenge is just around the corner. So Su Tong was really surprised that this guy came to his door. However, Su Tong was actually very tired of having this hottie come to his door. On the one hand, it's because this guy is a hot potato. On the other hand, when the other party comes to visit, Su Tong always smells a very bad smell. It's because the script is correcting the plot that has been pushed further and further away from him. This feeling made Su Tong very unhappy. He went to great lengths to cause the human massacre, causing rivers of blood to flow in the human inn, to give a hat to the Yuankai Shen cult, and to create a positive image of himself as a chivalrous and righteous person, in order to avoid the previous teams being deceived by the masters of the world. The result of the siege. After all, even a good tiger can't stand up to a pack of wolves. If you meet this person now, your efforts will be greatly compromised. For a moment, Su Tong frowned, looking at the sizzling and greasy mutton skewers in his hands, and fell into deep thought. The Taoist priest from Longhu Mountain, Brother Yang doesn't want to see him, so we can just go back to him. On the side, Luo Jiming stood up and was about to help Su Tong send the Taoist priest away, but he was stopped by Su Tong. Forget it, it doesn't hurt to meet him. Please invite him in. Su Tong felt helpless, but not seeing him was not an option. He refused this time. Next time, who knows, under the influence of the script world, this old Taoist priest would continue to appear in a place where he was caught off guard. In that case, he would more passive. After all, I still don't have the ability to really jump out of the chessboard. Not long after, Zhang Yishan walked into the courtyard under the leadership of the envoy. Seeing Su Tong sitting in front of the charcoal fire, Zhang Yishan raised his eyebrows slightly, cupped his hands towards Su Tong and said, "Infinite Heavenly Lord, Zhang Yishan of Longhu Mountain pays homage to the Marquis." The fact that Su Tong was named Xinwu Marquis has now been spread all over the world. Because he became famous in the Battle of Xinwu Pass, Su Tong was awarded the title at Xinwuguan. Taoist priest, you're welcome. I'll give you a seat if you come. Yang Hong came from a humble background, but Su Tong had been an official, and even held a high position. It was a matter of skill to increase his authority. Only when Zhang Yishan sat down did he listen to Su Tong say, "The Taoist priest is here at the wrong time. I will leave for the front line of Langshan tonight. If the Taoist priest wants to ask me for help, I'm afraid I can't escort you to Linen Mansion. Come on. Get out of here, I don't have time to fight with you." Su Tong spoke first and tried to block Zhang Yishan's mouth, but Zhang Yishan seemed to be fully prepared and immediately said, "The Marquis serves the country and the people, and a poor man can understand the punches of the Marquis. Please rest assured, Mr. Ho, because I am here today just to say thank you. Thank you Mr. Ho for helping me in Hutu Mountain. Hey, the murder case at Human Inn can't be hidden from others, but it can't be hidden from me if you don't help me. Let's fight to the death." Su Tong frowned, glared at Zhang Yishan, and his face suddenly turned cold. "Don't take it to heart, Taoist priest. I just wanted revenge. It's a pity that I couldn't kill Yeliki outside Shinwoo Pass this time. It's a pity. What happened in Human Mountain is rotten to my stomach, otherwise I will hold a grudge very much if you dare to say so. Don't blame me for attacking you. Immeasurable Heavenly Lord, the Marquis is already an unparalleled hero at this age. Dijo and Yeliki will definitely not be the Marquis' opponents, but the Marquis still has to be careful. As the saying goes, it is difficult to guard against hidden arrows in front of the enemy. This time they can escape purely. It was a fluke, I won't be so lucky next time. Continuing to test. The two argued at each other for a long time, but in the end they had nothing to say. Su Tong could only look at Luo Jiming, who was standing aside. Well, I remembered my humble duty. I have to inspect the city defense today, so I won't accompany the Marquis. Luo Jiming observed what was happening and immediately stood up and left, and ordered the attendants to retreat. After everyone had left, Su Tong simply opened the skylight and said frankly, "Speak directly, what do you want?" "Immeasurable Heavenly Lord, I have only one merciless request. Please give this thing to the current Holy Lord." As Zhang Yishan spoke, he took out a box and placed it on the table. Su Tong glanced at the box. Is this a so-called innate treasure? Thinking of this, Su Tong directly tried to open the box. He had the god killing you to crack the world's mechanism, but when he actually put his hand on the box, he realized that the box was not locked and could be opened directly. When he opened the box and took a look, there was only a piece of jade inside. Is this what it is? Although the script in my hand says that this thing is an innate thing, it doesn't make it clear what it is. Su Tong reached out to pick it up and tried to throw it into the prop book, but the prop book rejected him on the grounds that special mission items were not allowed to be included in the prop book. In this way, I can't use the prop book to determine the origin of this thing. However, after holding it in his hand and looking at it for a while, Su Tong was sure that this thing was just an ordinary jade, not even a Hishan jade. You defected from Longhu Mountain just to give this thing to the Emperor of Tianqian. Su Tong looked back at Zhang Yishan. Of course, this matter is of great importance, please. Bang, Su Tong closed the box and threw it towards Zhang Yishan. Here, let's see you off. Good guy, you are treating yourself like a monkey. If he is such a worthless thing, all the masters in the world will come to surround him and kill him. It is simply ridiculous. Zhang Yishan was stunned. Seeing that Su Tong was serious, he immediately stood up and explained, Master Ho, this matter affects the whole world. Pandeo came to you because he was desperate. As long as you are willing to help, Pandeo guarantees that this matter will never happen. It's implicating the Marquis. This time Su Tong stepped forward and took the box from Zhang Yishan's arms. But this time, before Zhang Yishan could speak, Su Tong turned around and threw the box on the ground. Come here, throw the contents of this box into the pit. Zhang Yishan was anxious now. He quickly picked up the box and held it in his arms. After shouting away the two soldiers, he hurriedly came to Su Tong's side. Master Marquis, this thing is really an innate treasure. It just returns to its original nature. Seeing this, Su Tong stopped talking nonsense and stretched out his hand. Good points. Ah! Zhang Yishan was stunned. Let's stop talking nonsense. If you introduce yourself to your home and come in through the gate, I will kill you today, and everyone in the world will think that the treasure is in my hands. We all know what is in this box. If you want, I'll take the blame, so it's not too much to ask you for some benefits. Zhang Yishan is now the #1 broom star in the world. How could he not even know this bit of self-awareness and deliberately announce his name? Isn't it just to make the world's eyes focus on him? So Zhang Yishan came today with the determination to die, and he would risk his life to put the blame on his forehead. Everyone is a 1,000-year-old fox, pretending to be stupid. If Su Tong really doesn't want to take the blame, there is nothing he can do. But Su Tong didn't want to push things to the extreme unless he had to, otherwise he would be very passive. Seeing that Su Tong had reached this point, Zhang Yishan's expression finally became serious and correct. Okay, the Marquis is indeed very wise, and Dichu's defeat is not unjust at all. After saying that, Zhang Yishan sat on the chair, threw the box aside, picked up the roast mutton and took a bite. Tell me, what benefits do you want? I don't want much, just one thing, Zixiao Divine Thunder. Hearing this, Zhang Yishan almost jumped up from his chair. You'd better kill me. You can use your life as a poor man to gain a bigger reputation. The purple sky divine thunder is not allowed to be spread except by my disciple named Zhang of Longhu Mountain. The Longhu Mountain inheritance system has clear rules, and many things can only be controlled by disciples named Zhang. The surname Zhang represents orthodoxy, inheritance, and strength. Longhu Mountain does not prohibit dual cultivation, but not every generation has to pass it on to their sons. Only disciples with strength, character, and recognition can inherit it, so there is a saying of giving surnames. Although Zhang Yishan was admitted to have betrayed Longhu Mountain, he believed that he was not a betrayal, but a redemption, and he still called himself a disciple of Longhu Mountain when he was away from home. It would be worse for him to break this rule than to kill him. However, Su Tong was not helpless. He calmly took out something and gave it to Zhang Yishan. A very old parchment scroll. Now that things have come to an end, I have shown my cards. Master, it will be clear to you just by looking at this. Zhang Yishan glanced at the parchment scroll in Su Tong's hand suspiciously. He felt that the thing looked familiar. When he took it in his hand and took a closer look, Zhang Yishan's expression suddenly changed. He raised his head and looked at Su Tong in surprise. You. Su Tong nodded and said helplessly, after 1,000 years of catastrophe, we really don't have much left in Longhu Mountain. This purple sky divine thunder has been lost for too many years. Zhang Yishan's pupils trembled when he heard this. He opened his eyelids and recited the secret mantra silently. Suddenly, he saw dots of inscriptions on it, and the names of the heavenly masters of the past generations of Longhu Mountain actually appeared. This thing is exactly the sky map that Taoist Lingxia gave him when he broke into the Tianmen in Qingcheng Mountain. It has the names of the heavenly masters of the past generations, and also contains the heavenly graphics imprinted on it by the heavenly masters of the past generations. This thing cannot be faked, with dragons and tigers on it. The mountain mark cannot be faked. From Volume 11, Chapter 18. The only thing that can be faked is Su Tong's identity, but with this thing as a token, Su Tong is not afraid that Zhang Yishan will doubt him. Whether it succeeds or not depends on whether Zhang Yishan is willing to take the risk. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 956. Buzz. At night, the city gate was quietly pushed open by soldiers, and a group of people walked out of the city gate in the night. Brother Yang, let's just say goodbye. Luo Jiming bowed his hands to Su Tong and said goodbye. They both came from the military and were not so pretentious. Su Tong nodded, goodbye. After saying that, he kicked the stirrup and the horse hurried forward, running straight along the trail behind. Su Tong was alone on the strip, but Zhang Yishan had disappeared. However, Su Tong knew that the old guy was not far away and followed him unhurriedly. After taking a look at the box on the horse's leg, Su Tong felt that the transaction was not a bad one. Although Zhang Yishan didn't quite believe his words, he obviously knew his identity as a player. After the two argued for a while, Zhang Yishan finally taught Su Tong the first half of the Zixiao Divine Thunder Talisman. Why is it only the first half? Zhang Yishan's explanation is that only the heavenly masters of the past dynasties can do the second half. Although Su Tong didn't quite believe what the old Taoist said, Zhang Yishan bit him to death and only gave him the first half, so Su Tong had no choice. Fortunately, even the upper part of the Zixiao Divine Thunder Talisman is of great significance to me. The spell is not difficult. He knows the Thunder Talisman himself, and with the understanding of the thunder spell by the second soul Xiapangsha, he can practice it easily. Su Tong closed his eyes and meditated. In the sea of consciousness, Xiapangsha had already clasped his hands, with a serious expression on his baby fat face. A ray of purple light twined around his fingertips. This was the thunder seedling of Xixiao talisman. As long as once cultivated, it can be integrated with the second soul, making Xiapangsha's strength even further. Su Tong rode his horse and did not stop to rest until dawn the next day. "Boss, how long will it take for you to arrive?" Gao Zhou's inquiry came from the team channel. Gao Zhou had already met up with Li Bo and Lao Bai. This guy didn't take any detours and didn't stop during the process. Naturally, he arrived a few days earlier than Su Tong. As for myself, I need to make a big detour to get to Langshan. It will probably take another 2 or 3 days. Su Tong took out the map, looked at the direction, and said to Gao Zhou and others. "Free, what about you?" After a while, I heard Chang Wogu say in the team channel, "I won't go back for the time being. I found a good job here in Buman. In addition, leave me a few spaces in the warehouse. I want to handle it, transfer the last few prop cards first." It turned out that when Gao Zhou was pulling the Vitality Chariot, Chang Wuju had already quietly climbed onto the Vitality Chariot, taking advantage of the chaos. The black water dragon fang in his hand has a spell-breaking effect and can easily cut through the shield of the Yuankai chariot. He originally wanted to cooperate with Su Tong's attack, but when he saw Su Tong retreated with one successful attack, the Vitality Chariot was hidden. In this way, Chang Wogu can act as an informant here. If there is any information, he can notify Su Tong and others as soon as possible, and even destroy the Vitality Chariot when necessary. Be careful. Don't attack Yeliki if you are not sure. This guy has a ray of Xiaolishans will hidden in him. Once there is danger, he will be awakened immediately. Su Tong understood Chang Wuju's plan, but reminded him to be careful again. On the Vitality Chariot at that time, Xiaolishan's consciousness revived. Not only did he defeat his own killer move with one sword, but he also had the energy left to attack him first. It can be seen that this person's swordsmanship is higher than his own, and it is indeed true that he is ranked 3rd in the world. Originally, this guy just wanted to force him back and save his nephew Yeliki's face, but he didn't know that Su Tong wanted to give him a slap in the face even if he was injured. Although it didn't cause any real harm, it was enough to make the number 3 in the world uncomfortable for a while. "Okay, don't worry." Chang Wogu said that he didn't have a big problem here. Unlike Gao Zhou, Gu Zibai, and even Su Tong, he didn't have any ability to practice on his own and simply followed the props enhancement route. Pretending to be an ordinary person makes it less likely to be seen through. Su Tong took a short rest and then prepared to continue on his way. But when he just got on the horse, he suddenly raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced sideways at the forest beside him. Sure enough, it's still here. Not many people came, but there were still about 10 people. These people just followed Su Tong not far behind, and had no intention of taking action against Su Tong. They were more like a group of annoying little tails, following him closely, constantly sending intelligence to the people behind them, and reporting on themselves. Exposition. These people are all good masters, and some of them have even entered the Taoist realm, but if Su Tong is willing, he can kill them in an instant. However, Su Tong just patted the box on the horse and continued walking slowly. After walking through the mountains and forests and arriving at a small town, Su Tong walked into a restaurant with a parcel on his back and threw out a golden bean to the waiter. "Today, I will reserve the place. 12 tables of food and wine will be served to me as soon as possible. Done." The waiter was startled when he heard this. He wanted to ask a few more questions, but when he saw Su Tong's glare, he didn't dare to ask any more questions. He quickly lowered his head and ran into the kitchen. Su Tong turned around and looked around. "We are all following you, let's come down and eat together. After saying that, he found a place to sit down. The group of people who followed Su Tong saw Su Tong eating and drinking, and looked at each other for a while. After a while, someone finally couldn't help but walked into the restaurant, bowed his hands to Su Tong, and sat on a chair in the corner. If someone takes the lead, how can others just stand there stupidly? Soon the hotel lobby was filled with people. Su Tong had eaten and drank enough and had just put down his bowls and chopsticks. Seeing this, the others stood up and looked at Su Tong warily, regardless of the unfinished food in their mouths. Unexpectedly, Su Tong just shouted to the waiter, "Another table of the food just now." After speaking, he looked at everyone, shook his head and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I can still eat another table." After hearing this, everyone looked strange for a moment. Seeing that Su Tong had no intention of leaving, they finally sat down one after another. It wasn't until everyone had finished eating that Su Tong got up on his horse and continued on his way. They walked like this for 2 consecutive days. Su Tong stopped, they stopped, Su Tong rested, and everyone also rested. Even the money for food and accommodation in the inn, Su Tong generously paid for it. It was as if they were a tourist group, traveling behind the tour guide Su Tong. Gradually, some people began to feel a little embarrassed. "Master Yang, you are brave and courageous. I admire you for your magnanimity. I don't dare to disturb you anymore and I will leave now." A follower walked up to Su Tong while he was lying in the shade of a tree taking an afternoon break. After saying goodbye, he sighed and turned around to leave. There were 5 or 6 other people leaving together. Since Yang Hong discovered them, he did not kill them. He was very merciful. Not only did he ignore the past grudges, he even invited them to dinner and drinks. He never played any tricks on them. This is moral. Even though these people in the world were not very powerful and came from grasshoppers, they still knew what integrity meant. Many of them immediately wavered and refused to follow, even if they would be punished by their masters after returning, they still accepted it. When the rest of the people who didn't leave took a look, they couldn't help but feel bad. They thought, we agreed to follow. You guys are moral, so you leave first. We are all despicable people. After thinking about it, he slapped his thigh. Yes, I am also a hero. I will not do such a shameful thing. Someone immediately stood up. Brothers, over that mountain is Wolf Mountain. As the saying goes, the rivers and lakes are about the rivers and lakes. Since Yang Daxia wants to join the army to serve the country, we are definitely not traitors who betray the country and seek glory. Daxia Yang, our rivers and lakes will never change. There will be a meeting later, brothers withdraw. As soon as these words came out, everyone dispersed and left on their own. Su Tong got up from the ground and took a look. He couldn't help scratching his head. He didn't have so many good intentions. He originally thought of dragging these people over to join the army, but he didn't realize that they were more open-minded. He said with a dumb smile, "Those who are loyal will be slaughtered dogs, the ancients have never deceived me." After looking at the sky, he called Gao Zhou in the team channel so that he didn't need to bring people to catch the young man. Then he got on his horse and prepared to go straight to the Langshan camp. Only after Su Tong left did several figures wearing night clothes quietly appear. Several people looked at each other, and one of them took off his mask. A bunch of wine bags and rice bags. I said that relying on these reckless people will not do anything. Another person took off his mask, and it turned out to be a one-eyed dragon. He waved his hand and said, "This person is indeed unusual, but he will not have a good life for a few days. When he joins the military and is under the control of the court, Uncle Guo wants to it's easy to deal with him." This is the reason why people in the world are unwilling to join the imperial court. No matter how powerful you are, once you enter the court and become an official, you must act in accordance with the laws and rules of the court. The rules and regulations in this are like a tight curse on your head. Even if you are the Monkey King, you must still be a Bimawen. But a few people didn't know that the uncle they were talking about at this moment would soon face the darkest moment in his life. Until he was old, when he was mentioned about these glorious years, he couldn't bear it. I couldn't help but burst into tears. Under the Langshan camp, Wu Ji and others had already put on their neat armor early and were waiting outside the camp gate. As the commander-in-chief of the resistance against the northern barbarians, Wu Ji was waiting outside the camp in person today. One can imagine how important this person is. Not only Wu Ji was looking forward to it, but several generals were also looking up with their heads raised. The emperor personally conferred the title of Marquis Xinwu, which was a great honor and had not appeared again for decades. What's more, Yang Hong's amazing record is there. When Wu Ji got the news that Su Tong kicked Dichu and slapped the crown prince outside Xinwu Pass, he couldn't help but laugh to the sky. He had never felt so comfortable for a moment. Even on that day, Wu Ji wrote a handwritten letter and recited it in public. It was full of ridicule and sarcasm. After reciting it, he sent the letter to the northern barbarian camp for Xiao Qi to read. When Wu Ji thought of Xiao Kai's depressed face, he felt extremely comfortable. On the same day, Xiao Qi ordered the entire army to retreat 30 miles. This is undoubtedly a powerful booster for the Tiangan army, and the morale of the entire army is unprecedentedly high. Now that this cardiotonic finally came to the main force, Wu Ji and others couldn't be more excited. With the addition of this Xinwu, Wu Ji has made up his mind to give up his original plan to hold on and prepare to fight the northern barbarians to the death. Waiting anxiously. Suddenly a team came slowly from the front. Everyone cheered up at first, "Here we come." But then, when he saw clearly the banner held high by this team, his face suddenly fell. I saw a big word Su written on the big flag. The flag is embroidered with gold and has a lion on it. This is the unique flag of Su Lai's family. Su Lai will sit in the temple and will never leave the capital in person unless he has to. So the person who came must not be Su Lai. The person who held this banner last time was none other than the donkey-headed general who was criticized wildly by everyone, Liu Yanfang. This name is now cursed by everyone in the military. If he hadn't been greedy for power and advanced rashly, causing the 30,000 former troops to be strangled and routed by the barbarians, how could they have been so passive? What's even more annoying is that after Liu Yanfang was rescued by the masters around him, he didn't receive any punishment after returning to Linen. This incident also became the biggest shame since Wu Ji led the army. Therefore, when everyone saw this familiar flag again, their hearts twitched, and they felt like a pig teammate was coming to their door. Master Kuazu has gone too far. A young general cursed in anger. Shut up. Wu Ji's expression changed, and he immediately scolded everyone, lowering his voice and saying, "Don't speak nonsense." After saying that, he quickly stepped forward and met the convoy. As soon as Wu Ji and others approached, the motorcade stopped immediately. The curtain of the carriage was opened, and a young man in his 20s stepped out of the carriage. When Wu Ji saw it, his heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he thought to himself, "It's broken." He recognized the young man in front of him. No, it should be said that there were few people in Tiangan who did not recognize him. Even if he had never met him, he had heard of this guy's name. The second ancestor, Su Fan. Su Lai's biological son and today's uncle-in-law. Although the background is scary, this guy is a complete idiot. If he is an idiot, forget it, but he is still a playboy who does all kinds of evil. Compared with Yeliki, this guy is not even qualified to carry Yeliki's shoes. Why is this guy here? Wu Ji secretly complained in his heart. He sent away a big head like Lu, and now another dandy from the Su family came. This person is even more troublesome than the one named Lu. He can still give orders to Liu Yanfang with a stern face. Even if the other party won't listen to him, at least he looks decent on the surface. But facing his own teacher's own son, this dandy young man, Wu Ji felt uncertain. When the guards who followed Su Fan saw Wu Ji's expression on the verge of tears, they knew what the old guy was thinking. They immediately stepped forward and said, "General Wu doesn't need to see anyone. We are here to command the three armies. Never participate in military and political affairs." Hearing what the guard said, Wu Ji felt relieved. Although the other party was still here to gain military glory, at least this time he didn't have to worry about the other party clamoring to lead the army to fight. Without this constraint, Wu Ji didn't mind either. Give a share of the military merits and place it on the head of this dandy uncle. General Wu, thank you for your hard work. You still have to put on such a big show to welcome me. It's so polite. Su Fan stood on the shaft of the chariot and saw the soldiers lined up neatly around him. His face glowed red. Quickly, take out the silver reward from the back and distribute it among the soldiers. Su Fan immediately ordered that the silver coins from the carriages behind him be carried down and delivered to the military account door. The box was opened, and inside was neat silver. However, what Su Fan didn't expect was that in the face of these silver coins, no one among the soldiers would take a second look. There was even a hint of anger in some people's eyes. They are fighting at the front, and these people come to pick up what is ready. What is the use of giving them these 2 cents of silver? Can it exchange for their lives? As if he noticed that the atmosphere was getting colder, Su Fan's face gradually began to look less good. Wait, look over there. At this time, someone in the army pointed to the mound on the other side and shouted with joy, "The general is back." Everyone followed this shout and saw a white horse slowly appearing on the mound in the distance. Su Tong, who had changed into military uniform, was riding towards here on a war horse. Just one update today. I'll take a day off tomorrow to sort out how to write the early climax of this script, and I'll give you all the extra updates when the time comes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 957. Many sergeants did not recognize Su Tong, but Ji Zhou and others did. Seeing Su Tong's return, they all became excited and raised their spears high. "General, a great victory." A shout immediately infected the three armies. "Big victory, big victory, big victory." Amidst the slogans, the three armies behind the camp roared together, with an earth-shattering momentum that could be heard clearly even in the northern barbarian camp 30 miles away. Xiao Qi, the head coach of the northern barbarians, walked out of the commander's tent wearing an animal skin. Looking at the murderous aura ahead, he couldn't help but grimace. "Commander, is Yang Hong back?" a northern barbarian general said with a solemn expression. Yang Hong's name is now like a shining star piercing the night sky. If the northern barbarians still don't know who cut off their food route and killed a Bao Bao, then their intelligence would have gone too far. Failed. Yang Hong was granted the title of Marquis in the first battle at Qinwuguan, and is now ranked 23rd among the generals in the world. Although his ranking is not high, this ranking has already made many veteran generals jealous. He Xiao Qi tightened the animal skins around his body and walked in front of the camp with a group of soldiers. Although the Xian kingdom was destroyed, the national destiny collapsed and turned into thousands of tributaries to nourish the world. As the saying goes, times create heroes. Not surprising. But it's just a fool's errand to think that this person can control the battlefield. Now that the food road has been opened, although I ordered the three armies to retreat 30 miles, there is a barrier and a favorable location. It will snow heavily in 1 month at the earliest and in 2 months at the latest. By then, the troops will be demoralized due to lack of food. We will wait for our army to launch a full-scale attack and force them to retreat to Shaoxing, negotiate with us for peace, and rule by crossing the river. Our century-old cause of the northern barbarians will be completed. Also, speaking of this, Xiao Kai's cloudy eyes were filled with sparkling light. He was already 68 years old. If nothing unexpected happened, this battle would be the last battle in his life. It would be a glorious curtain call or death on the battlefield. Xiao Qi is looking forward to his ending being brilliant enough. At the same time, on the other side, Su Fan and others looked coldly at the Marquis Xinwu, who they had never met before but was already famous in the court. This was a person that even his own father was very optimistic about. Su Tong also noticed Su Fan and others. After all, the big flag embroidered with golden lions was so conspicuous that it was difficult not to notice it. When he walked to the camp gate and glanced at Su Fan and others, he suddenly became alert. After reading the script, Su Tong knew very well that the Su family was the big boss in this world. Su Lai himself was a vessel for the gods. In the last round, the players almost wiped out the group because of the Su family. But I am not the weakling in the last round, or rather I am dealing with the Su family. At this time, Su Tong turned his eyes and saw Wu Ji and others. At the reminder of Gao Zhou and others, he quickly jumped off the horse and bowed forward with both hands. The guilty General Yang Hong meets Marshal Wu. Wu Ji was startled when he heard this, and hurriedly stepped forward to help Su Tong up with both hands, and asked with a puzzled expression, "Marquis Xinwu has made great contributions to our army this time. What crime is there? The front line was defeated. In order to stabilize the morale of the army, I pretended to be the captain of the former Camp Zhao. This is a serious crime. I ask Marshal Wu to punish him." Wu Ji and the others couldn't help but look at each other after hearing this. In fact, everyone knew about this matter, but they didn't mean to point it out. After all, Yang Hong is now Xinwu Hao and one of the Siping generals. Who would care about such a trivial matter? Unexpectedly, the first thing Su Tong did after returning to camp was to expose the matter in public. However, Wu Ji was able to serve as the commander-in-chief of one side, and his thoughts were so delicate. He immediately understood Su Tong's intention after being stunned for a moment. He held his beard and pondered for a few seconds. This matter should be beheaded according to law, but you have repeatedly achieved military exploits, so this matter should be left to me. It is up to the Holy One to make the final decision. This statement is actually the same as what he didn't say. Now the emperor is very fond of the Marquis Xinwu who gave him a big face. I am afraid that this memorial is a disguised way of praising Yang Hong for his bravery and strategy, and maybe there will be another reward. It's just that Su Tong exposed this matter. If anyone wants to make a fuss about this matter in the future, I'm afraid there will be no chance. Su Tong's approach was not only an invisible statement to Wu Ji, showing that he had no intention of taking credit for being arrogant, but also removing this weak flaw on his body, killing two birds with one stone. Sure enough, after Wu Ji finished speaking, he took Su Tong's arm more affectionately and walked into the camp. "Sir, this person is very thoughtful and meticulous in his work. You must not allow this person to take advantage of you." The guards around Su Fan stared at Su Tong's back, and their expressions became solemn for a moment. "Humph. If it was easy to deal with, why would my father let me come to this hellish place to suffer?" Su Fan rolled his eyes. Because of the dog money named Lu, the Su family's prestige in the military had been lost a lot. Coupled with the sudden rise of Yang Hong, even his father began to worry that Yang Hong was growing up too fast, so he asked himself to come to the front line to appease the morale of the soldiers and get close to the Xinwu Marquis. As for military achievements, it was all incidental. Su Fan didn't care about things. Don't add unnecessary extravagance. Use this person if you can, and don't offend him if he can't. My father is sitting firmly in the court, our Su family's luck is not bad, and I, the emperor, can't do anything to us. After saying this, Su Fan motioned to the guards to find a comfortable place to set up camp. On the other side, Su Tong was also brought into the commander's tent. Only after everyone was seated, Wu Ji motioned to a young general on the side to tell Su Tong the current situation on the battlefield. Although the northern barbarians retreated 30 miles, they took advantage of the geographical advantage and deployed layers of defenses. If they wanted to charge in head-on, even the land gods would not be able to do so. Thousands of people formed a military formation, and their auras were connected together. The auras swallowed up the sky and the earth, and evolved into strange formations. The changes were endless and mysterious, and could not be broken by one person. The more powerful a general is, the more he knows how to use formations. Xiao Qi is a famous general in the world, and he is the best among them. Even his old rival Wu Ji himself is not completely sure that he can beat him. Now the two sides have formed a competitive situation. No matter who attacks or defends, the struggle is nothing more than food and logistics. However, the northern barbarians have annexed the Xian kingdom and have the world's granaries as backup. They are determined to continue to consume it. If our army comes to winter, if we can't break it, we have no choice but to retreat. After the young general pointed to the sand table in front of him and analyzed the situation clearly, Su Tong frowned and looked at the sand table for a moment. Can we take another detour to attack the grain? Disaster. Wu Ji said one word very directly. Although he did not say the reason, one word was enough to explain many problems. When Su Tong thought about it, he could think of it. How could he not expect that he was facing a famous general in the world? The two sides were in a stalemate at this point, and it was obvious that they had begun to play their cards right. Seeing Su Tong's silence, Wu Ji asked everyone to go down to rest first, leaving Su Tong alone. Does Lord Xinwu have any strategy to defeat the enemy? Su Tong didn't expect that Wu Ji would ask such a question when he was left alone. He was stunned for a second before replying, I'm a newbie here, and I don't have a clue yet. But I just heard what the young general said. I think the method is, although there are many, they are nothing more than one word. What? Wu Ji stared at Su Tong with wide eyes. Wait. Su Tong looked calm and said what no one dared to say, and then added, wait for a flaw. In fact, this was only half of what he said, and there was another half. Su Tong thought about it again and again but still didn't say it, but I believe Wu Ji knew it in his heart. In the current situation, neither Xiao Qi nor Wu Ji from the northern barbarians wanted to fight rashly. Even if they fought hard to the end, even if they won, it would be a miserable victory. In this world, there are not only Tiangan and Buman, but also Xia, Dali, and Tubo. Once both sides are seriously injured in the fight, neither side will gain anything in the end. Moreover, both of them are famous generals in the world, and they are already nearly 70 years old. They all know in their hearts that neither the annihilation of the barbarians nor the annihilation of the Qian can be achieved overnight. At this age, as long as they are undefeated, it is victory. Why bother taking the lives of soldiers to add icing on the cake to yourself? So both sides are waiting, either for the other side to have a flaw, or for an opportunity for both sides to step down. Wu Ji sighed and had to say in his heart that Yang Hong saw this clearly, but he was inevitably a little disappointed. He wanted to hear some different opinions from Yang Hong, but he didn't expect that it was similar to what he thought. Then I thought about it again and found it ridiculous. The fact that I could think of this was enough to show that this kid was a talented general, and he was also someone who couldn't break the situation. It's much different from the 16 characters I saw that day. I guess these 16 characters didn't really come from Yang Hong. I don't know where I saw them. Just when Wu Ji wanted to let Su Tong go down to rest, Su Tong looked at the sand table. Commander, since we have to wait, let's not wait in vain. Why don't I bring a group of troops to harass him from the side and kill him if I have a chance, send barbarian soldiers back before they have a chance. If a blind cat encounters a dead mouse, it may be possible to find the opponent's important land for harvesting grain. When Wu Ji heard this, a look of displeasure suddenly appeared on his face, and he thought to himself that this was not nonsense, as dividing the troops at this time would lead to chaos. But before he opened his mouth, Wu Ji remembered that this Shen Wuhao was not an ordinary person. He was the best in the world. In addition, he had heard from the soldiers who followed him how Su Tong killed Abao Bao, and he suspected that this man had a Taoist weapon in his hand. Soldiers, their strength is extraordinary. At that moment, he roughly understood what Su Tong meant. After thinking for a while, he nodded, "Okay, you can go and rest for a while. Later I will ask Wu Zhe to order a troop of soldiers and horses to dispatch as you wish." As soon as Su Tong heard the name, he knew that Wu Zhe was probably a relative of the handsome man, but he didn't point it out. After all, the cake belonged to everyone. There was no reason for others to go out and steal wild growth while they were playing in a group. In the end, why don't you give me a few heads as compensation? After Su Tong came out of the camp, Gao Zhou and the other three were standing not far away waving to him. When Su Tong was about to pass by, a figure flashed out from the side and raised his hand towards Su Tong. "Marquis Shen Wuo, Uncle Guo has invited you. Make up for the next 3 days, 3 chapters a day, and make up for the missing chapters due to leave." Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 958. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly. After recalling the contents of the script, he remembered who this uncle was. Then he took a look at the figure dressed as a servant in front of him, and he turned out to be an enlightened master. Even in this script world, the enlightened heavenly being is also a top-notch master in the world. After all, they are the symbol of invincibility. Unexpectedly, the other party was willing to dress like a domestic servant and follow the army into the camp. This shows how powerful the Su family has become. The other party was looked back and forth by Su Tong's eyes, and soon cold sweat broke out on his forehead. After all, enlightened heavenly beings are still human beings. Although Su Tong is only one level higher than him, earthly immortals are also immortals. The gap between the two is huge. People from two worlds. Fortunately, Su Tong did not embarrass him. He just nodded lightly and said, "Lead the way." Then he said to Gao Zhou and the others in the team channel, "I'll go take a look first and talk about anything later." There is not much writing about this uncle in the script, mainly because the players in the last round did not have much contact with him, so there are only a few brief introductions in the script, such as the negative aspects of being a playboy, arrogant and domineering, etc. Evaluate. But as the eldest son of the Su family, he is definitely not a waste. It is just because the players in the last round did too little development of the script and did not really dig out valuable information. The uncle's tent was set up on a mound behind the military stronghold. Although it was on high ground, no one would set up his tent in this place. It was too conspicuous and could easily be used as a target. What's more, the uncle's big tent is really too luxurious. The tent made of elk skin was surrounded by a layer of gauze. Before he got closer, Su Tong felt a cool and refreshing feeling. He inspired his spiritual vision to scan and saw that there was an array of talismans on the tent. However, these talisman formations are not attack or defense, but auxiliary talismans similar to air conditioners. The most outrageous thing is that the top of this guy's tent is inlaid with an orb as big as a baby's fist. Sunlight is absorbed into the orb, and after being warmed and nourished by the orb, it shines into the tent. Not only does it make the light in the tent very soft and comfortable, but it also can have a calming effect. If one day the northern barbarian army rushes over, I am afraid that this tent will be destroyed as soon as possible. When Su Tong walked into the tent on the thick carpet, a wisp of fragrance filled the air. A young man, a few years younger than Yang Hong, was lying on the soft cushion. Seeing Su Tong arrive, Su Fan sat up and looked at Su Tong for a few seconds before standing up with a smile. "I have heard about the reputation of Marquis Shen Wuo for a long time, and it is indeed extraordinary when I see him today. Strangeness." Su Tong secretly screamed that it was weird. This uncle was not even a grand master. His muscles were hollow and hard, and his aura was chaotic. He was clearly an ordinary person. However, the other party dared to look at him for so long. Su Tong couldn't help but doubt this. Is your uncle trying to hide his strength on purpose? Uncle Guo, you're too polite. I wonder what your instructions are when you call me. Su Tong sat generously on the soft sofa beside him. Not to mention, it was really comfortable. It was more comfortable than the big sofa in reality. The softness and hardness were moderate. When he lay down on it, he felt as if his whole body was being wrapped. When he looked at it again, only then did I realize that the soft fabric was woven with gold wire. The gold wires were as thin as hair. This craftsmanship alone could only be accomplished by a master-level craftsman. What a TN luxury! Su Tong curled his lips. This is a luxury product. Chanel and Gucci bags are rubbish. Just these floppy sleeves are worth tens of millions of works of art in real life. Seeing Su Tong being so casual, Su Fan's fat face showed a smile. I just heard that Marquis Shinwu wants to have a separate army and prepare to go out to fight. These few people under me, he is also a brave warrior who is good at fighting, and he also wants to help Marquis Shinwu. Oh! Su Tong heard the words and glanced at the three people in the camp. The three of them were indeed first-class masters. Their blood and energy were so strong that they shot straight to the sky. They were indeed first-class masters. These are the guards around you, Uncle Guo. If everyone follows me out, who will ensure your safety, Uncle? Su Fan curled his lips, picked up an orange and threw it into his mouth. It doesn't matter, I'm in charge of the main camp, and the northern barbarians can't touch me. Besides, you also know that my unlucky relative Lu Yanfang caused a huge disaster and caused great harm to my family. My reputation in the army has been greatly reduced. My father nominally asked me to work in the army, but in fact he wanted to earn some military merit and go back. After speaking, he looked outside the camp. Look at the current situation, winning or losing is no longer important. What everyone is waiting for is just a step for both sides to withdraw their troops. If I go back in such a dejected state, I will definitely be blamed by my father, so it is I hope Marquis Shinwu can be accommodating. This favor from you will definitely be indispensable to our Su family. I believe you, Ghost. Su Tong rolled his eyes inwardly, saying this was just a lie. Based on the Su family's status, Wu Ji would give him 3 points of military merit even if he had no merit. To get these people to follow him, Su Tong knew with his toes that it was not that simple. But then he thought about it, and he suddenly had an idea in his mind, and said to himself, if you don't take the road to heaven, there is no way to hell to break in. This is what you asked for, and you won't be able to blame me then. Thinking of this, Su Tong looked slightly embarrassed. This matter is serious and needs to be reported to the commander-in-chief. Don't worry, you just need to take my people out of the camp. As for Wu Ji, I have my own way. Su Fan said with a smile and casually called Wu Ji by his name, which showed that he never cared about the commander-in-chief. Okay. Let's set off at 3 o'clock tonight. Please make preparations early. Su Tong stood up, cupped his hands towards Su Fan after speaking, then turned and left the camp. Only after Su Tong left, the guards following Su Fan frowned. Sir, I'm afraid this is inappropriate. If there is an accident, we can't afford it. Su Fan picked up a grape and threw it into his mouth. What are you afraid of? If I stay here, who would dare to do anything bad to me? Su Fan spit out a grape seed with a nonchalant expression, and then took out a golden piece of paper from his arms. He handed the command arrow to the guard on the side. With this command arrow, you can mobilize the 3 armies. As long as you try to lure him to Luyupai in the west, just use this command arrow to order the troops back. When the time comes, the Xiao family will naturally help us deal with this person. After it is done, remember it. You must bring that thing back, And you won't lose it? Boss, what kind of medicine is this uncle selling in his gourd? After Su Tong and Gao Zhou met, they found a haystack and sat down. Su Tong took out his pipe and started smoking leisurely. It felt quite good to smoke and bask in the sun. In fact, Su Tong was not sure what the uncle was going to do. It was expected that nothing good would happen, but again, being beaten passively was never what Su Tong liked. A puff of green smoke came out of his mouth and nose, and Su Tong narrowed his eyelids. No matter what he does, he just wants what I have in my hand, but since he wants to wade into this muddy water, let's just do it a big one. After speaking, Su Tong took the three of them and whispered in their ears. When the three of them heard this, they were all shocked. Boss, this is not a mess anymore. Li Bo's eyes widened, feeling that this plan was too sinister and could affect his entire body. We can't break the situation without chaos. Besides, the Su family is our enemy in the script. Before they officially break up with us, let's strike first and catch him off guard. Su Tong blew out a puff of smoke and his eyes became sharp. He never talked about kindness and morality when dealing with his enemies. Seeing that Su Tong had made up his mind, Li Bo could only swallow, clasped his hands together and recited Ba silently. Soon, the young general who explained the sand table to Su Tong in front of the commander's tent came up and raised his hand towards Su Tong. Wu Jie, who is of humble rank, pays homage to the general. By order of the commander, I am asked to mobilize men to fight with the general. This young general was very young, with white lipstick and white teeth, and a handsome appearance. His eyes looked at Su Tong with admiration. Su Tong was granted the title of Marquis in the first battle, and his illustrious military exploits were known all over the world. He was the hero worshipped by these young men. Wu Jie was no exception. Although his father was a famous general in the world, the young man despised Wu Ji's steady style of play. Su Tong also inquired and found out that the young man in front of him was Wu Ji's biological son, who was only 19 years old. A tiger father has no dog sons, Su Tong praised. Su Tong did not bring many people this time, but most of them were familiar faces, such as Ji Zhou and others. Of course, they also included many unfamiliar generals who wanted to go out and try their luck. Uncle Guo's 3 personal guards also put on light armor and rushed over. Su Tong gathered these people together, opened the map, and pointed in the direction of 3 towns on the left called Yequan Dongqizai. Our main focus this time is harassment. It would be best if we can find a place where the enemy troops are storing food. We won't fight hard, don't go deep, and we'll make detours. You understand? Everyone nodded to express their understanding, and then Su Tong pointed down to the woods to the west of Langshan Mountain. We have a large number of people, and going out to the camp together will make too much noise, which is not good for the morale of the army, and will also scare the enemy, so we divided into 3 groups and gathered here. After that, we will set off on time on the 4th watch, and anyone who disobeys the order and trespasses will be killed. Promise. After everyone agreed in unison, they immediately began to go back and order the troops and prepare to set off. Master Ho, we. Uncle Guo's 3 guards came forward, wanting to follow Su Tong's team, but Su Tong pointed at Gao Zhou and Chang Wugu. They are my brothers, and they hold my seal in their hands. You just let them go, I'll be back later. The 3 of them looked at each other, and although they hesitated in their hearts, they did not dare to tell Su Tongming, for fear that Su Tong would become suspicious. Then they thought about it and they had to gather together anyway and couldn't run away, so they simply accepted the order and left the camp. Seeing that the team had begun to leave the camp in batches, Su Tong looked back at the hill behind him and raised his eyebrows. He saw 5 furry balls of meat coming out of the entrance of the hall. Su Tong pointed at the uncle's head. Daying, whispered, go, steal the person out for me, don't disturb other people. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 959. Sir, we have already set off. Oh, I see. Sir, Marshal Wu will ask you to come over later. He said he has important matters to discuss. Oh, I see. Sir, Butler Su sent someone to deliver a message from the master, saying that if there is any change in the retreat plan, let us go first. Get out. This time, before the servant could finish speaking, a ball of papyrus hit the servant on the head, and the servant was scolded out of the tent in disgrace. You bastard, you won't even let me clean up when you poop. Su Fan sat on the toilet and cursed with a dark face. Sitting under the buttocks is a wooden barrel carved from sandalwood. The barrel is carved into the image of a three-legged golden toad. It opens its big mouth to catch prey. The appearance is lifelike. It is covered with gold foil and has three claws stepping firmly on it. On the ground, this craftsmanship alone is worth a fortune. There is a thick layer of fine rosin powder inside the wooden barrel. The powder should not be too fine or too coarse, and should be extremely fluffy, so that when feces falls into it, it will immediately be thickly wrapped in rosin. The principle is equivalent to the effect of cat litter in reality. It's just that the rosin in it is worth hundreds of times more than a box of cat litter. There were no newspapers or mobile phones in this era. Su Fan couldn't help complaining while sitting on the barrel, "It's a terrible place up there. If I had known I would be sent to this hellish place by my father, I should have gone out 3 months ago. Jinling is playing." Su Fan was thinking with his eyes closed when he suddenly felt something was not right. He felt that his surroundings were light and airy. When he opened his eyes suddenly, he realized that he had been moved out of the tent. When he lowered his head and looked down, he saw 4 furry balls running out of the toilet quickly under his bucket. Seeing this scene, Su Fan was stunned for a second, and was about to start calling someone, when suddenly a furry black flesh ball jumped out in front of him. The flesh ball flashed with golden light, and turned into a golden color, facing his head. Bumped into. Vajra supernatural power. Su Fan's eyesight went dark. Just this thought flashed through his mind, and he was already unconscious. When Su Fan woke up, he felt the breeze blowing in front of him and his head was still buzzing. After finally regaining consciousness, Su Fan was stunned when he opened his eyes. I saw that I was actually riding on a horse, following a group of troops galloping through the grass and forest. I was kidnapped by the northern barbarians. Su Fan subconsciously wanted to shout out, but when he took a closer look, he found that the armors worn by this team were all the clothes of their heavenly warriors. Although everyone's face is covered, the clothes on their bodies are unmistakable. Just when Su Fan didn't know what was going on, a man rode on horseback and was beside him in a moment. "Uncle Guo, you slept very comfortably." Su Fan was even more confused when he heard the sound. After taking a closer look, it turned out that this person was none other than Yang Hong, who was wearing light armor. Yang Hong. Su Fan was stunned for a few seconds, and then he yelled, "Young man is looking for death, how dare you hold me hostage?" "Hey, don't talk nonsense." Su Tong's head immediately shook like a rattle, and he said with an innocent face, "You want to make military achievements and decide to travel with the army. Why do you bite me now, Uncle Guo?" "Master, we must be conscientious as human beings." Su Fan almost jumped up from his horse when he heard this, raised his finger and pointed at Su Tong. His expression suddenly darkened. "Yang Hong, you really don't want your life. If my father knew about this, he would have to skin you. Don't do it. I thought you were the best in the world, but you were far behind my father." Su Tong took out his ears and looked fearless, which made Su Fan's teeth itch with hatred. "Okay, my uncle-in-law wants to make military exploits, so there's no point in asking his own servants to do it for him. Now a great opportunity to make military achievements is right in front of us. We can't miss it." Su Fan suddenly became alert when he heard this. He looked around and found that the surroundings were getting more and more desolate, and the direction was officially heading north. His expression changed and he said coldly, "What are you going to do? I have accomplished meritorious service by killing the enemy. Is it possible that I can still sell you?" After Su Tong finished speaking, he looked Su Fan up and down, and then said half-jokingly, "Don't tell me, your body is fair and clean. If it really falls into the hands of those rough northern barbarian men, you may not be able to survive a few with unique flavors." Yang Hong. Su Fan's eyes widened. He really didn't expect this guy to be so bold as to kidnap him in the military camp. Even if the emperor met his brother-in-law, he would only be polite to his dignified uncle, Su La's son. However, whether Su Fan was glaring or yelling, Su Tong pretended not to hear. Gradually, Su Fan gradually calmed down, grabbed the reins, ordered the horse to stop, and glanced sideways at the cavalry around him. "Anyone who doesn't want to die, get out of my way." As he spoke, he reined in his horse and turned around. Seeing that Su Fan was about to leave, Su Tong didn't stop him, and even specifically signaled for everyone to get out of the way. He just said lightly, "Uncle Guo, you must be careful along the way. We are now deep into the rear of the northern barbarians. If you encounter northern barbarian scouts, you must be careful that their bows and arrows are short-sighted." When Su Fan heard this, he turned around and stared at Su Tong suspiciously. "Didn't you say that this operation is just harassment, not in-depth or hard-fought?" "Yes, if we don't act as bait, how can the soldiers of the three armies perform meritorious service?" Su Fan was not a fool. He understood it as soon as he heard it. He couldn't help but said angrily, "Then why did you drag me with you?" Su Tong scratched his head. "Isn't this what I'm thinking about? It's useless for me to save my life, but it won't work. With you, the uncle of the country, by my side, are you afraid that Xiao Qi and the others won't take it seriously?" Su Fan suddenly sneered, "Ha ha, you are really humble. You slapped Xiao Lishan. Do you think your head is worthless?" After saying this, Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly and glanced at the uncle. The smile on his face gradually narrowed and he stared at Su Fan and said, "How do you know that I slapped Xiao Lishan?" "Everyone in the world knows that he slapped Yeliki 3 times in Xinwu Pass, but few people know that the third slap was actually slapped on Xiao Lishan's face." Su Tong did not make any publicity about this matter, but only told Gao Zhou and others. Su Fan not only knew that he had slapped Xiao Lishan in the face, but also knew that it was a slap. This was very abnormal. As soon as these words came out, Su Fan's face suddenly stiffened, and he realized that he had said the wrong thing. Su Fan's heart sank, but he reacted very quickly and immediately explained, "My father said that." This is nonsense when it comes to others, but it is not so nonsense when it comes to Su Fan. My father and Xiao Lishan have been rivals for many years. He knows Xiao Lishan very well and even has an informant beside him. Yeliki has a trace of Xiao Lishan's thoughts. No one else knows about this. How come my father I don't know? Su Fan's reason was so good that even Su Tong couldn't tell whether this guy's words were true or false, so he simply stopped asking further. But Su Fan didn't plan to run away now. This barren mountain and wild ridge was still near the northern barbarian camp. If he really encountered a northern barbarian scout, his life would be lost here. The group of people continued to grope their way north along the path, and did encounter a few northern barbarian scouts along the way. However, Su Tong had clairvoyance and spotted the figures of these people early. He led the team to avoid them carefully, and then groped around. After a while, I finally saw a large tribal tent. It doesn't look very big, as if there are only 5 or 6,000 people stationed there. General Yang, I think they are all cavalry. Let's withdraw first. This doesn't look like a place to store grain. Su Fan stared with wide eyes. He had seen the messengers from the northern barbarians, but before he saw them, those messengers had been forcibly washed 3 or 4 times and put on new clothes. At least they looked like human beings. But now these rough men smelled fishy, and there were horse excrement and human excrement around the camp. This was really unbearable for Su Fan, who spent an average person's year's salary to poop. Hearing this, Su Tong looked around with wide eyes. Why didn't I see the cavalry? They are all old, weak, women and children. Seeing Su Tong opening his eyes and telling lies, Su Fan felt angry and could only stare. He had already sworn in his heart that if he returned to the camp one day, he would take out the gold medal arrow and send this guy to death row. No, it's not enough to be thrown into death row. He must let his father personally take action and cut this man into pieces. Just as Su Fan was greeting Su Tong in his heart, he suddenly felt a warmth on his shoulders. Looking back, he found that Su Tong had put the cloak behind him on his body. The weather in the mountains is too cold. Uncle Guo, you are so delicate that you must not be exposed to the cold. Suddenly being treated so tenderly by Su Tong, Su Fan stared at him with a wary face. You take me back to the camp now, and I will pretend this never happened. Okay. Su Tong readily agreed this time, but the next second he whipped up his riding whip and hit Su Fan's mount in the crotch. Crack, there was a sound of the whip. The whip was pulled down, and a gash was opened on the horse's buttocks. Under the severe sting, the war horse let out a painful scream. Unprepared, Su Fan's eyes widened subconsciously. He tightened his grip on his saddle, the forest shadows shook in front of his eyes, and he rushed out of the woods with a curse. Su Tong's roar came from behind. General Su is extremely powerful, brothers, charge forward. Su Fan took a closer look and found that Su Tong and others were already rushing out with their own banners behind them. Seeing Su Tong holding the battle flag high, riding his horse and whipping his whip, Su Fan felt relieved and thought to himself, I don't even dare to care whether I live or die even if I don't care about you. Unexpectedly, this group of cavalry had just rushed out of the woods, and two cavalrymen came out from the distance, one on the left and one on the right. Brothers, the wind is blowing. Seeing this, Su Tong simply threw the Su family's flag to the ground, waved his hand, turned around and ran away with everyone. Su Fan was completely dumbfounded at this time. When he looked at the cavalry charging from a distance, his face turned pale for a moment. He hurriedly tightened the reins, turned around and chased after Su Tong and others. While chasing, he cursed, beasts, sooner or later I want my father to kill you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shuigan Xiao. Chapter 960. No matter how hard Su Fan scolded him, he was running in such a panic at this moment. An arrow flew past his face. Su Fan felt that his heart was about to freeze, and his mind went blank. For the first time, he felt that death was so close to him. As the trampling of horseshoes behind him got closer and closer, Su Fan felt that the blood in his body was cold from head to soul. In a daze, he felt as if a cold scimitar was already slashing at him from behind. Buzz. For some unknown reason, Su Fan's ears began to buzz. When he saw the retreating figures of Su Tong and others, Su Fan even felt that his vision began to darken. In an instant, Su Fan seemed to hear someone calling him, but he didn't have the courage to look. I don't know how long the trance-like state lasted. Suddenly, a burning feeling came over my face, causing Su Fan to open his eyes suddenly. As a blurry figure appeared in front of him under the dim light, Su Fan opened his mouth blankly. Is he dead? The four words sounded louder or softer, until the blurry figures in front of him gradually overlapped, and Su Fan could clearly see the face in front of him that he hated so much. Hey, Uncle Guo is indeed blessed with great fortune, and he's not even dead. Hearing Su Tong's teasing, Su Fan finally woke up, his face suddenly changed, and he quickly reached out and groped around on his body. After making sure that he was not missing any arms or legs, Su Fan seemed to be taken away. The bones were the same, and he almost fell off the horse in one fell swoop. Thanks to Su Tong's sharp eyesight and quick hands, I'm afraid this respected uncle-in-law would have fallen half to death. Seeing that the guy was about to pass out, Su Tong sighed. He didn't believe that this guy really had no martial arts skills at all until now. He put his hand on Su Fan's pulse and injected a ray of pure yang qi into this guy's body. Su Fan regained consciousness. I'm alive. With this pure yang energy, Su Fan finally regained his composure. Su Tong's hand was still on his pulse. When he saw him waking up, he frowned and said, "You're still alive, but your body is very fragile. You have coronary heart disease and high blood pressure, fatty liver, you take care of them all." What did you say? Su Fan had never heard of any of these terms, but it was true that he had poor bones. He was diagnosed with heart palpitations when he was young. His father searched for famous doctors all over the world for him, but there was no improvement. If it weren't for his Su family's great fortune, and he used various precious elixirs to cleanse his hair and marrow, he might not have survived even 10 years old. Although he saved his life, his body was frighteningly weak. Otherwise, if he had a father who was the best in the world, even if he failed to live up to his expectations, he wouldn't be able to do anything with his fists and kicks. Of course, with his father around, it would be the same if he didn't practice boxing. Few people in the world would dare to touch his hair, well, except for ordinary people like Yang Hong. Forget it, as long as everything is fine, we have to leave quickly. I just made a false shot and turned back with my troops to rescue you. However, I accidentally lost your flag. Later they found you're with our status, we will be in trouble. Upon hearing this, Su Fan was furious. He glared at Su Tong and shouted, "You are not careful. I saw you deliberately throwing my flag on the ground. Is there any? Who saw it?" Su Tong Zhuang acted like a fool, and all the soldiers shook their heads in unison, which made Su Fan want to tear this guy's skin apart. Just as they were about to continue to curse, a sharp hawk sound sounded in the sky. Everyone looked up and saw a gray hawk flying quickly over their heads. "Okay, we've been discovered, let's go, drive." When Su Tong saw this, he immediately waved his riding whip and quickly led the people to the west direction. Su Fan cursed a lot, but he didn't dare to neglect his actions at all, and quickly followed the team. This time he was afraid of falling behind again, and he wished he could ride on the same horse as Su Tong. But what Su Tong didn't know was that when they left, both Baman and Tiangan were in chaos. On Tiangan's side, the dignified uncle suddenly disappeared. When Wu Ji got the news, he almost fainted from anger. Others don't know how he doesn't know that this uncle's body is worse than the girls in the brothel. Not to mention encountering barbarians, even a cold wind blowing over can make him seriously ill. His teacher sent his son here just to appease the dissatisfied army officers and soldiers on behalf of the Su family. But if something really happened to this uncle, the good days of the Wu family would be over. Immediately Wu Ji went crazy and sent out all the scouts to search. No matter what, they had to find the news about this uncle, otherwise everyone would be in trouble. On the other side, the flag dropped by Su Tong was also delivered to Xiao Kai's hands. Looking at the fallen flag, Xiao Qi was a little confused. This flag is the Su family's banner, and the embroidered fabric on it is absolutely unmistakable. This big flag symbolizes the Su family's face, and it is equivalent to Su La's personal visit. How could it be left in the hands of a scattered cavalry force? At that time, some of them shouted, "Save my uncle, I saw a young man wearing a silk robe, climbing on the horse." A barbarian warrior whispered. Hearing this, Xiao Qi looked even weirder. Is it a scam? This was Xiao Kai's first thought, but as soon as he thought about it, he felt something was wrong. While he was hesitating, Someone came from outside the big tent to report that the fourth prince had returned with someone. Xiaoqi raised his eyebrows slightly and hurriedly walked out of the camp with the big flag. At this moment, Yeliki was getting off the vitality chariot with his head lowered, and Dizhou stood beside him. In fact, he could have come back a few days ago, but his whole face was black and swollen after being beaten by Su Tong, and even one of his big teeth was removed. He has been hiding outside and afraid to see people. He didn't dare to come back until the swelling subsided. However, although the swelling subsided, the bruises on his face could still be seen, showing how painful Su Tong's slap was on his face. Xiaoqi didn't bother to comfort the fourth prince, and walked forward with a big flag. After telling the fourth prince his doubts, he asked Dizhou to use the Dian abacus to figure out what was going on. Dizhou also felt very strange, but when he took the flag and took a look, it was indeed the golden lion flag of the Su family. He immediately took out the Dian divine abacus and began to calculate. It didn't take long to get the result. Although Dizhou was not good at learning Yi, he was definitely from the Su family. After getting this result, Xiaoqi raised his eyebrows slightly. Catch him alive, don't hurt him, be sure to catch this person for me. Regardless of whether the other party is Su La's son or not, as long as he is caught, it will be a bargaining chip to blackmail Tianqian. This is simply a gift from God. Originally, I only thought that crossing the river to control the river would be the biggest result. Now it seems that Tianqian may be able to give up greater benefits. How could Yeliki miss such a good thing? If we can catch this person, we can avenge our past humiliation. Huh. At this time, Dizhou's face suddenly changed slightly, and he stared at Dian Shen Bonpan and said, "Your Highness, Yang Hong seems to be in the hexagram." Upon hearing Yang Hong's name, the expressions of several people present suddenly changed. It was obvious that both Wu Ji and Dizhou were extremely wary of Yang Hong. However, Yeliki's eyes sparkled when he heard this, and he gritted his teeth and said, "It's better if he is here. Let's settle the big feud at Chenwu Pass last time together today." As soon as these words came out, Xiaoqi quickly tried to dissuade him. "Your Highness, this matter needs to be considered in the long term. There is no way that this incident may be a trap for this person." However, Yeliki burst out laughing when he heard this, took out a letter from his sleeve and handed it to Xiaoqi. "Read it yourself." Xiaoqi took the letter and took a closer look. His expression suddenly changed and he exclaimed in surprise, "The patriarch is here." As soon as these words came out, everyone's expressions changed drastically. Even Dizhou felt his heart beat faster. The mountain-like figure appeared in his mind, and cold sweat suddenly broke out on his forehead. There is only one person who can be called the leader of the clan by Xiaoqi, the third in the world, Xiao Lishan, the king of the South Campus. Hey! Yeliki smiled proudly. He might have accidentally pulled his back molar, which made his expression look painful again. Fortunately, at this time, the eunuch on the side hurriedly brought over a cold towel. The cold towel stuck to his face made Yeliki feel much better. "Don't make any noise. My uncle is here to kill just one person and then leave. You still have to rely on the old commander to win or lose this battle." Hearing this, everyone took a deep breath and felt like they were surviving a disaster. No wonder they are so nervous. Xiao Lishan, like Su Lai, is both a man responsible for the fate of the country. If he participates in this war, Su Lai will definitely come in person. When the two sides fight, it will take the power of the whole country to fight to the death. The result of once the war begins, there will be no peace in the world. With his uncle as his backer, he didn't believe that Yang could survive this time. Thinking of this, Yeliki threw the towel in his hand on the head of the eunuch beside him. Unable to suppress his inner excitement, he jumped over Xiaoqi and said to the crowd, "Gather your troops and get ready to go. This time I want to avenge my shame. Promise." After receiving the order, everyone immediately retreated. The little eunuch holding the ice basin lowered his head and turned around, took off the towel on his head, narrowed his eyes, glanced sideways at the surroundings, and then shouted in the team channel, "Head, Big Brother trouble is coming." There are 2 more updates in the evening. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 961. Xiaolishan is coming. When Su Tong heard the news, he was also shocked and looked suspiciously at Su Fan, who was chewing compressed biscuits. "It's true. I'm probably here for you. Besides, we've already set off here. I'm afraid it won't be long before we find you." Chang Wuhen mingled with the Yuankai chariot and followed Yeliki. Basically, he could hear clearly all the information that Dichu and others knew. Coupled with the concealment of the team channel, Chang Wuhen was able to, in terms of transmitting information, it can be as seamless as a wiretap. He even said that if necessary, he would backstab Yeliki at the critical moment or destroy the Vitality Chariot. Without the blessing of the Vitality Chariot, Dizhou was no match for Su Tong. The only trouble now is Yeliki's biological uncle, the 3rd best in the world. In principle, this person's strength is rank 2nd in the world with Su Lai. As long as the perverted monster from Longhu Mountain does not appear, no one in the world can be his opponent. Luck is one thing, and strength is another. The last time he was on the Vitality Chariot, he got confirmation of this when he wanted to kill Yeliki. At that time, Xiaolishan just relied on the thought of possessing Yeliki and the blessing of the Divine Sword. Being able to overwhelm Su Tong in swordsmanship shows how powerful he is. Su Tong said from the bottom of his heart that he was not completely sure he could beat Xiaolishan, but he couldn't beat him and there were people behind him. So even if Xiaolishan came in person, Su Tong was not afraid at all. He indicated to Chang Wuhen that he should hide his identity for the time being and not expose it easily unless absolutely necessary. After all, such a good eavesdropping device is really easy to use. Su Tong then called Gao Zhou and the others and asked them what was going on over there. Gao Zhou and others said that everything went smoothly. He and Li Bo were in a group, and Gu Zibai led a group of troops. They split into 2 teams and raided in the direction of Yequan and Dongqi respectively, killing a group of barbarian swimmers. Bing, the process is effortless. Originally, the 3 guards under Uncle Guo had trouble with them and planned to leave the team to find Su Tong. As a result, Gu Zibai killed one of them on the spot, and the remaining 2 immediately became obedient. Li Bo observed the situation and found that the remaining 2 people seemed to have some trump cards, so he proposed to separate the 2. Now they are both quite honest. "Okay, as I said before, we don't want to fight or go deep. We are attracting firepower from the front. With Su Fan as a target, we are not afraid that they will not move." After instructing them to act according to the plan, Su Tong turned around and walked in front of Su Fan with a dark face, staring at Su Fan, making Su Fan's body tremble. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing. Is this food delicious?" Su Tong pointed to the compressed biscuit in Su Fan's hand. Su Fan shook his head. To other soldiers, this thing was a heavenly delicacy. But for Su Fan, who spent as much money on shitting as an ordinary person in a year, this thing was eat something fresh. After all, no matter how delicious the compressed biscuits are, they can't compare to freshly baked white flour steamed buns, let alone those delicacies from the mountains and seas. Su Tong nodded, "Then you should suffer for a while." After saying that, he sat next to Su Fan and said, "We will definitely not be able to go back next time. The people from the northern barbarians have blocked our way back. If we want to escape now, we have no choice but to go back. Keep going west. Where do you think it's appropriate for us to go?" Su Fan gnawed on the compressed biscuits and did not reply easily. He just asked, "Do you want to die or live?" As soon as these words came out, the other warriors all stared at Su Fan. Even the leader Ji Zhou and others had put their hands on the hilt of their swords. This move was naturally seen by Su Fan, but there was only a sarcastic look in his eyes. He didn't know whether he was sarcastic about having such a day, or he was sarcastic about the courage of these soldiers. How to say? Su Tong was not angry at all, and even took out a bottle of wine from his prop book and handed it to Su Fan. Su Fan frowned immediately after taking a sip of the drink, and then handed the drink to Ge Zhou, who was standing aside. Then he talked about another thing. When I came here, I heard from people in the Jianghu that Zhao Yishan from Longhu Mountain met you at Chenwuguan and gave you something. Su Tong pointed to the cloth bag behind his mount. It's inside. If you like it, I'll give it to you. Give me. Su Fan looked at Su Tong doubtfully. Are you willing? It's just a broken piece, take it if you like. Su Tong had an indifferent attitude, as if he wished the uncle could take the things away as soon as possible. However, Su Fan felt that Su Tong was joking with him. If you had given me this thing earlier, there wouldn't have been so many things, but do you know what this thing is? I don't know, Su Tong shook his head. I'm not pretending to be stupid, I really don't know. Although the script mentions that this thing is an innate treasure, there is no information about this thing in the script. Hey, this thing is an innate divine fetus, a treasure born and raised by the earth. It can be taken away from the body to be refined, and it can reach the sky in one leap. Su Fan pointed to the cloth bag on the horse and told Su Tong its origin. It is rumored that this thing was supposed to be a treasure dedicated to the previous emperor. However, when the previous dynasty collapsed and the world fell into pieces, this thing was suppressed at the foot of Longhu Mountain. Now that it has reappeared, Zhang Yishan wants to dedicate this thing to him. The current emperor Jiaozong. Hearing what Su Fan said, Su Tong understood instantly. If the emperor obtained this innate divine fetus and could transform into an innate divine body, it would be a disaster for the Su family. After all, the Su family has been holding the country's fortunes hostage and controlling the government's affairs for more than a day or two. The emperor only relied on the support of a group of civil servants to prevent him from being completely ignored. Nowadays, the emperor and his ministers are in harmony, but the emperor is afraid of the Su family, and the Su family needs the national destiny, so each takes what he needs. Otherwise, in the event of civil strife, no matter who wins or loses, it will touch the foundation of the country. In this era when the northern barbarians are eyeing the enemy, Dali, Xixia, and Tubo have ambiguous attitudes. No one can afford such turmoil. Of course, this is the case for Tianqian, and the situation is similar for the northern barbarians. However, the prince of the northern barbarians is Yeliki, and with the support of the Xiao family, even if the king dies, as long as Yeliki is still alive, the northern barbarians will not be in chaos. It's a pity that my sister has been married to the emperor for so many years, but she has never been pregnant with a dragon. Su Fan couldn't help feeling a little regretful when he said this, otherwise he, as an uncle, would be able to support his nephew unconditionally like Xiaolishan. Then if I give you something, you can give me a way to live. Su Tong stared at Su Fan and asked. It's hard to say. What my father means is that this thing comes from the Jianghu and must return to the Jianghu. This is the best ending. If you believe me, go west. If you don't believe me, go south. After Su Fan finished speaking, he lowered his head and continued to nibble on the compressed biscuits in his hand. This thing tasted a bit thick and tasted a little worse, but it was better than those dry rations and dried meat for the march, and at least it was not too toothsome. Su Tong casually took out the map, opened it and looked at it carefully. If you go south, you are going back, but if you go back now, you will inevitably run into the northern barbarians. If we continue running to the west and finally take a detour back to Langshan, although the distance is a little further, it is still a feasible plan. But Su Fan obviously wanted to go west. In that case, I will do as you wish. Su Tong looked at the map and was already reorganizing the map, script, and all the information he had in his mind. According to the escape route of the last round of players, which was also all the way to the west. There must be a large gathering of martial arts masters in the west. Coupled with Su Fan's words and the news of Xiaolishan's personal visit, Su Tong's eyes finally locked on a place called Luyuepi, and a glimmer of light flashed in his eyes. Knowing that there are tigers in the mountains, he prefers to go to the Tiger Mountains. The fire beating in Su Tong's heart is the same as his determination to push all the way up. Come on. I'm ready, let's see how big a surprise you can give me. Seemingly aware of Su Tong's excited gaze, Su Fan looked at Su Tong with some confusion, not knowing what the boy was thinking. But when you get to Luyu Slope, I'm afraid it will be your death. After everyone took a short rest, they got on their horses and continued heading west. The further to the west, the more desolate it became, but in this place where people were rarely inhabited, Su Tong found many traces of people walking by. Although they were well concealed, these traces were still invisible to Su Tong. His spiritual power was activated and he looked forward. Sure enough, a trap had been set in the deep forest ahead. Su Tong could vaguely see a group of figures hiding silently on the side of the forest. Are we here already? It's faster than I thought. Seeing that Su Tong suddenly made everyone slow down, Su Fan couldn't help but said, if you are afraid, leave the innate divine fetus and leave now, maybe it's still too late. Su Tong raised his eyebrows slightly, glanced at the woods ahead, and then glanced at Su Fan. Are you afraid of death? Su Fan frowned. Of course, I haven't lived enough yet. Then, I wish you good luck. What? Before Su Fan could understand what Su Tong meant, Su Tong suddenly waved his hand and pushed Su Fan off his horse. Get him. Su Fan was thrown to the ground and was dizzy. Before he could understand what Su Tong was going to do, Ji Zhou and others had already rushed forward. They took off Su Fan's clothes in 3 strokes and followed Su Tong forward. Holding a mask that looked like human skin and putting it on Su Fan's head, the next path is up to you. Su Fan realized something was wrong, but before he had time to think about it, he saw a white fox suddenly appear behind Su Tong, and immediately lost consciousness after him. When he stood up again, Su Fan's expression and behavior became a little more charming, and even his voice changed. Headmaster, this man has a strong character, but his body is too weak. If there are any sequelae in the future, it's not my fault. The upper body of the immortal family itself depends on whether the base is strong enough. Being strong enough is the first step to becoming a disciple. Su Tong waved his hand. It doesn't matter, just don't kill him. As he spoke, Su Tong took off his light armor and put it on Su Fan. Then he put on Su Fan's luxurious robe, got on his horse, and looked at Ji Zhou and others. Brothers, if you don't die, when I get back I will promise you all a fortune and let's fight together. After saying that, he kicked the horse in the belly and heard the neighing of the war horse. The group of people quickly rushed towards the woods ahead. Not long after they rushed into the woods, a burst of brisk footsteps also began to be heard in the surrounding woods. The voice was very soft, but the number of people was not a few, and the rustling footsteps sounded like the wind blowing on the forest leaves. Suddenly, a long sword pierced through the forest, and a black shadow followed the sword light in front of their horses. The long sword in his hand slashed on the ground. Formation. It seems it's too late to post the next one. Well, I can only post it in the early morning. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 962. Buzz buzz. As soon as the words fell, the surrounding atmosphere was shaken. Only 6 long swords and 6 scimitars were seen, crisscrossing each other. The swords were arranged in yin and yang positions. The swords were forward and backward. 12 people divided Su Tong and his party into 3 layers and surrounded them. These 12 people are all enlightened masters, and each person's chi machine is perfectly connected, turning the surroundings into chaos. Yang Hong, some people say that your swordsmanship is superb, but everyone in the world of swordsmanship is dissatisfied. I have set up a Lianji formation here to see if your sword is more powerful or my formation is more powerful. A loud voice came from someone thousands of miles away from the sword formation. Sword and sword array, isn't this formation lost? I didn't expect that the Huashan sect actually practiced it. Someone in the forest in the distance let out an exclamation. I dare not say that the name of this formation is powerful, but it is unparalleled in the world. It is a sword formation that allows the weak to defeat the strong. But it is also the most complex sword formation in the world. Those who use the sword should move from the shock position to the dry position. For those who wield swords, the position from Sun to Kun is reversed. The Kunlun school's Lianji sword technique and the Huashan school's anti-Lianji sword technique both have 8864 variations. There are 4096 variations between swordsmanship and swordsmanship. The complexity of martial arts in the world can't say anything better. It is precisely because the sword formation has endless changes and requires so many people to cooperate with it. When 12 enlightened masters form a sword formation, even land gods will find it difficult to break the formation easily. Feng Tian who has brought out all the old bosses of the Huashan sect this time, but he doesn't dare to take action easily. Someone was hiding in the shadows and sneered at Feng Tianhua's behavior. However, few people dared to respond to this sentence. After all, everyone came to snatch the innate divine fetus, and they were not much better. We only have Yang Hong left. If the others leave now, please leave as soon as possible, otherwise the sword will be blind later. An old man made room in the sword formation, signaling to the soldiers around Su Tong that they could leave first. However, when Ji Zhou and others saw this, they did not move. Instead, they quickly gathered together and formed a horse formation to prepare to charge into the formation. This place is complicated, you go out first and wait for me. Seeing this, Su Tong signaled Ji Zhou and others to go out first. The cavalry's horse formation charge was the most powerful, but after losing the advantage of movement, Ji Zhou and others were unable to protect themselves in the face of these masters. General. Ji Zhou and others looked ashamed. Their strength was too low, not even as good as the Grand Master. After losing the advantage of charging, they became like a burden. At this moment, there was a feeling of shame in their hearts. I just regretted that they practiced too little on weekdays and could not help their generals. If each of them had practiced the 5 tigers to perfection, they would not be so powerless at this moment. Don't think too much. You must save Su Fan's head when you get out, otherwise we will all die. Su Tong noticed the disappointment in Ji Zhou's eyes and immediately scolded him sternly. This was an exaggeration. If Su Fan was really killed, it would be unlucky for Ji Zhou and others at best. The worst he could do was just slap his ass and leave. If he wasn't left alone, Su Lai couldn't do anything to him. But he could add himself in, just to remind Ji Zhou and others of their importance. Sure enough, when Ji Zhou and others heard this, their eyes lit up. General, don't worry, even if we risk our lives today, we will definitely not let you down. As a low-level warrior, what he hopes most is to be valued by others, not to mention Su Tong, who led them all the way out of the siege. He immediately took orders to leave the sword formation with Su Fan, who was possessed by Dia. After the group of people left the sword array, the old man quickly closed the array gate. At that moment, the 12 old men quickly changed their positions and saw the transformation of the 12 people's shapes, which made people's eyes overwhelmed. Yang Hong, you, the younger generation, are the best in the world, but when it comes to swordsmanship, none of the 12 of us are inferior to you. If you surrender now, it's still too late. The leader of the old man spoke again. Hearing this, Su Tong sneered and said, I can see that you guys are good, but my master said that in the world of martial arts, the sword is the most respected. Only those who can't play with swords will play with knives. But if they don't understand how to play with knives, they will play together, and finally the sword will be played. If you don't practice well and your sword is inferior, you are a despicable person. Presumptuous. Hearing Su Tong's sarcasm, the 12 old men's eyes widened and they immediately swung their swords. For a moment, the sword energy in front of him entered the forest, and in an instant, the surroundings turned into a dark world. I saw that the sword energy was like cotton and water, turning into cotton threads and intertwining together, causing dark air currents everywhere. The world was upside down, the 5 elements were misaligned, and huge pressure came. The horse Su Tong sat on suddenly let out a scream. Unable to bear such terrible pressure, he fell to his knees directly on the ground. Seeing this, Su Tong could only dismount and wave his palms. He felt as if he was swimming in a sea of mercury, and every step was very heavy. At this time, Su Tong suddenly opened his palm, and saw the sword light in his palm bursting forth, strangling the surrounding black clouds and scattering them, melting like boiling soup and pouring snow. But as soon as these black clouds were melted, they were immediately replenished from all directions, making it impossible to kill them. Suddenly, the sound of whistling swords and wind was heard all around, and thousands of fluorescent blades flew out, like a swarm of mosquitoes encountering blood, and they rushed towards this direction. As soon as these sword lights came into contact with Su Tong's sword lights, they shook violently and then exploded. The huge explosion seemed to have formed a chain reaction. In an instant, Su Tong was surrounded by bright sparks and a roar. Boom! Boom! The violent explosion shook the entire land, shaking people's hearts and causing disharmony between blood and energy. The people who were watching from a distance were also shocked by the thunder-like sound. It is rumored that the sword array can kill land immortals, and even to the extreme, even the gods in the sky dare not get involved easily. However, this is just a rumor, but when I saw it today, I was convinced of the power of the sword array. It can be called the strongest among people. It is indeed the heritage of Huashan. The human massacre caused heavy losses to the Huashan sect, and all the seeds of the younger generation were slaughtered. This was no less than a fatal blow to the Huashan section. Most of the luck of the century-old sect evaporated, and its decline was already a certainty. This time Feng Tianhua invited 12. An elder from the sect came out of the mountain to seize the innate divine fetus and restore the destiny of the Huashan sect. After this round of indiscriminate bombardment, the entire black cloud changed again. Suddenly, a green brilliance flashed, and countless Kaishan divine swords as thick as giants flew out overwhelmingly and smashed down on Su Tong. It's nothing more than that. It's still far behind the Lianji dust formation I encountered when I broke through the Tianmen. In the chaos, Su Tong stood still with his hands open, but he saw the Ruyi furnace appearing behind him. He saw the divine furnace igniting the blazing pure yang fire, and the lightning strike liquid stored in it quickly boiled, and a large amount of life, the essence, fell on Su Tong like a waterfall. Immediately afterwards, white hair grew on Su Tong's forehead, the Vajra Dharma appeared behind him, he pinched the Vajra seal with his left hand, and struck the great compassion seal with his right hand heavily into the void in front of him. For a moment, the surrounding void shook, and countless giant swords shattered. The violent backlash caused the expressions of the 12 elders to change drastically. This is not swordsmanship. Everyone was also a little surprised, but Su Tong looked like a humanoid Tyrannosaurus at this moment, with golden scales flashing on his body. He was not afraid of the sword light in front of him. He carried the power of Buddhist Vajra with every punch and palm, and the sword. There was an upheaval in the formation. At this moment, the faces of the elders of the Huashan sect suddenly darkened. Su Tong's nonsense, of course, could not break the formation, but it also greatly increased the load of the formation. The force of each fist collision in the void was like a bone-piercing force. The ice came in wave after wave. After all, these elders are old and lack vitality and blood. They cannot hold on for long before some of them begin to bear it. Mean. Now many people saw Su Tong's intention. This was clearly the way of street gangsters. He obviously couldn't break the formation, so he simply accelerated the load of the formation to bully the elders of the Huashan sect who were old and frail and wanted to stay alive. Tired them to death. At this time, many people were complaining about the Huashan sect, but Su Tong didn't care what they thought. They saw thousands of swords condensing into a terrifying storm, and Su Tong not only did not retreat, but stepped forward to meet them. Bang bang bang. At that moment, countless swords, chi, and daggers hit Su Tong's body, but even if they split the scales on Su Tong's body, the wound quickly recovered as before with the blessing of the Ruyi furnace. The violent collision finally made an elder of the Huashan sect unable to hold on any longer. He spurted out a mouthful of blood and passed out on the spot. Without the support of an elder, cracks soon appeared in the formation. As soon as Su Tong used his Buddhist magical powers, he raised his hand and used 2 thunder talismans, directly exploding the gap in the formation, and jumped out of the sword formation. At this time, among the Huashan sect elders maintaining the formation, another elder could no longer hold on and vomited blood and died. Yang Hong, we are waiting for a competition. You don't use swordsmanship, but you use brute force to forcefully break the formation. It is nothing more than bullying my old age. You can't win without using force. Faced with the accusation from the elder of the Huashan sect, Su Tong responded with a sneer, as the ancients said, old people are not good at fists and kicks. If you old people don't go to nursing homes for your retirement, don't blame me for bullying you. After Su Tong finished speaking, his expression suddenly straightened. How dare you openly attack the Marquis and Prince? You will be punished for disobedience and you will be executed. I saw Su Tonghua's voice fell, his feet shrunk to an inch, and he ran to the leader of the old man in an instant. He held the pure yang sword in his hand. You are not worthy to see me use my sword. After all, these Huashan elders still have not settled their position in their hearts. They are still thinking about the rules of the world, but they don't expect that the person they met today is a gangster who doesn't follow the rules. While speaking, I saw a pure yang sword energy in Su Tong's hand. Facing Su Tong, the land god, without the blessing of the formation, these old bones were no longer able to parry, and they were killed by Su Tong in an instant. Everything is in disarray. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinite Script Killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 963. The Lianji formation of the Huashan sect is indeed a rare sword formation in the world. It is unpredictable and has the power of ghosts and gods. If the person who set up the formation was 20 years younger, even if Su Lai came in person, he might not be able to get any benefit. But the Huashan sect is too old. In recent years, the sect has been in decline and lacks backbone strength. Although the 12 elders who formed the formation are strong enough, they are already old and cannot withstand the roguelike style of Su Tong. When everyone was feeling sorry for him, Su Tong showed no mercy. The so-called fight was just to cover up his true nature as a robber. The only mercy Su Tong could give to his enemies was death. I saw lines of pure yang sword energy surging in Su Tong's hand, and the sword light slipped out along with his fingertips. A Huashan elder still wanted to resist with his sword, but the gap between humans and immortals was instantly reflected at this moment. The sword energy bursting out from the long sword in his hand was unable to block even a single move. There was only a crisp sound of bang. The next moment was to cut it in half. Blood sprayed on the ground, but Su Tong had a different feeling in his eyes. He looked towards the sky and saw the Yinhu emerging in the air behind him, opening his blood-plate mouth, constantly devouring the luck of these Huashan elders. For every person killed, Yinhu swallowed up one more point of luck, but this was not something that distracted him, but a strange feeling in the dark. In a daze, Su Tong saw a ball of air flowing in the air. They gathered around him, as if trying to absorb all the remaining luck around him. It seems that there is a power in the dark that is blessing me. This feeling put Su Tong into a very strange state, and the sword energy in his hand became more and more powerful. In an instant, most of the 12 people were killed or injured, and the remaining old people did not dare to fight anymore and ran back one after another. But Su Tong was already murderous, so why would he let them leave? As he walked, the forest leaves around him shrunk into shadows, and he chased after them in an instant, killing all of them without leaving a trace. The iron-blooded methods made everyone's eyelids jump wildly. But until this moment, Feng Tianhua did not appear, as if he had disappeared, causing everyone hiding in the dark to curse the sky for being a coward. Whoa! At this time, there was a long and deep horn sound in the distance. Su Tong looked sideways and saw the Vitality chariot rampaging through the mountains and forests. Following closely behind was a cavalry wearing black armor. It's finally here. Some people saw the iron cavalry of the northern barbarians and the Vitality chariot. Yang Hong. In the distance, everyone could hear Yeliki's roar. Yeliki was seen standing at the front of the Vitality chariot, glaring in the direction of Su Tong. Everything went smoother than he thought. He thought it would take a lot of trouble, but he didn't expect Yang Hong to commit suicide and plunge into the fall. Yuepi. General. When Ge Zhou and others saw this, their expressions suddenly changed. They didn't expect the northern barbarians to pursue them so quickly. Su Tong didn't panic when he saw Yeliki. He just asked Ge Zhou and others to follow closely. He jumped on a war horse and pointed forward. It doesn't matter, I will take you out. His eyes were clear, and he was still looking around. The strong feeling was getting closer and closer, as if there was a force gathering around him, urging him to break out of the siege. Arrogant, do you really think you are invincible? A sneer came from mid-air, followed by 4 flying swords falling through the air, blocking Su Tong and others. These 4 flying swords are different in their own way. They have the power of heaven, earth, wind, and thunder. When the 4 swords fall on the ground, they form a sword array, cutting off the path forward of Su Tong and others. Buddha's light suddenly appeared in Su Tong's pupils, and his divine vision was activated, and he saw Feng Tianhua hiding behind the 4 swords. Seeing this, Su Tong frowned for a moment. He painstakingly fabricated the human murder case just to avoid being hunted by these Jianghu, but he didn't want these people to find him in the end. Everything seemed to be the same as the plot in the previous round of scripts, as if nothing had been changed by me. Is this what is called fate? Su Tong vaguely felt the malice from the script world. From the moment Zhang Yishan found him, it seemed as if there was an invisible big hand that wanted to forcefully change the script to its original direction. No. It's different. The trump card I hold this time is enough for me to push all the way up and change the direction of the entire script. At this time, Su Tong looked sideways at Su Fan, who was possessed by Dia, and suddenly became more determined in his mind. Yang Hong, if you want to leave, leave behind the innate divine fetus. Feng Tianhua hid in the dark and refused to show up directly. At this time, he still had to hide his ears and steal the news. This hypocrisy of being a bitch and erecting a monument made many people present feel sick. Su Tong took out the box and hung it on his waist. He patted the box and said with a smile, "Wouldn't you know if I am invincible if you try it?" Feng Tianhua heard the words but did not respond. Instead, he made a seal with both hands, causing the sword formation in front of him to unfold. The sword light flashed in front of him, forming a sword shadow field. Vientian sword formation. This sword formation is not as complicated as the Lianji formation, but its power cannot be underestimated. Combined with the power of heaven, earth, wind, and thunder, and with Feng Tianhua personally in charge, it is enough to kill earthly immortals of the same level. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that Feng Tianhua is determined not to fight Su Tong directly, but chooses to block the way in front of him so that the Yuankai divine sect behind can deal with Su Tong. This explains why Feng Tianhua was still unwilling to take action even though the Lianji formation was broken and all the elders in the sect were slaughtered by Su Tong. Hey, the Huashan sect is really. Those who were watching the battle hiding in the dark all sighed and complained when they saw this. The Huashan sect was so majestic back then. The sword came out of Huashan and was unparalleled in the world. The founder of the Huashan sect, with one man and one sword, made his name in the world. Unexpectedly, today this famous name has been lost to Feng Tianhua. Everyone's complaints were very quiet, but they could not hide it from Feng Tianhua, a supreme master. However, he had no feeling at all about these complaints. Without the innate divine fetus, the Huashan sect would truly be dead. Rumble, rumble. The vitality chariot was getting closer and closer, and Dichu personally took command. He saw the cannon muzzles, and began to adjust the wind direction to aim at Su Tong and others. Seeing that the vitality chariot had begun to accumulate power, Su Tong couldn't help but sigh, "Old Taoist priest, it's really hard to get this half of the Zixiao Divine Thunder Talisman." After saying that, he turned back to look at Ge Zhou and others. "Are you afraid?" Ge Zhou and others looked at each other, and then smiled at each other. "We are born as generals, and our deaths are the general's ghosts. I only ask the general to keep him with me after we die in battle, so that we can continue to serve the general like dogs and horses." Labor. As he spoke, Ge Zhou and others pulled out the scimitars from their waists, their eyes firm for a moment, and they were ready to die at any time. Ding. You have gained the loyalty of Ge Zhou and other warriors. After receiving the prompt, the smile on Su Tong's face became deeper and deeper, but he waved his hand. "That's not possible, I have to take you back." As he spoke, he slowly raised his palm and summoned the 200 firefly riders from between the virtual and the real. The cold light of fireflies illuminated the mountains and forests in front of them. Tao soldiers. Everyone's eyes widened for a moment, and they didn't expect Yang Hong to have Taoist soldiers with him. Many people were relieved after seeing this. No wonder Yang Hong was able to perform extraordinary feats on the battlefield. It turned out that he had such a Taoist soldier to help him. But even if there are Tao soldiers, there are such a small number. At this time, Su Tong took out the Hussar's order again from the prop book and looked at the token in his hand. Upgrade. Along with the upgrade prompt coming from the prop book, the fluorescent lights in front of me exploded instantly. The originally ice blue fireflies suddenly turned into a crimson. As the fire quickly gathered, the crimson fire spread from the warhorse to the cavalry's body. All red scales, a 6-foot-long warhorse with a broadsword, and even the warhorse made a low sound like a tiger or leopard in the red fire, and the body was tightly bound by a layer of red armor that looked like flesh and blood. Tightly wrapped, even the warhorse's blindfold is so tight. Ding. You used the Hussars order at 9, and your troops were promoted to Nightmare Hussars. Ding. Your unit has been promoted to the Nightmare Cavalry. This time it has been upgraded to the highest level and cannot be promoted any further. Ding. Your troops are promoted to Nightmare Cavalry and gain group skills, Nightmare Charge. Nightmare Charge, when the troops charge simultaneously, they will send out a mental shock to all targets in front, and the damage will be calculated by the number of troops x 300. Cooling time, 30 seconds. 200 Nightmare Cavalry stood there neatly, giving people a strong sense of oppression, as if they were a group of evil spirits crawling out of hell. Su Tong looked back at Ge Zhou and others, called out the flying dragon flag and pointed forward. "Follow me, kill." The word kill was heard, and Su Tong raised the bright red flying dragon flag. The big flag fluttered, and in an instant, a strong wind danced, causing a faint golden light to appear on everyone. Active Skill 1, Strong Wind. Spend 1000 script points, centering on the flag holder, radiating all friendly summons and soldiers within a kilometer, increasing their morale by 100%, their movement speed by 45%, their strength by 40%, and obtaining Flying Dragon Armor blessing. Flying Dragon Armor enables allies to gain a layer of light and shadow armor. In the charging state, they are immune to 45% of physical and magical damage. They are also immune to stun, control, and mental attacks. They will also generate 10 times their own strength against the first enemy they encounter after charging. Impact damage. With the blessing of skills, the speed of this team suddenly accelerated, and they rushed straight towards the sword formation in front of them like a bloody sharp blade. Bang bang bang. The moment Su Tong and others rushed into the sword formation, countless dense sword energy as fine as cow hairs splashed on everyone like heavy rain. In just the blink of an eye, someone on Ge Zhou's side was pierced by these sword energies. Great sun and a wishful thinking furnace. When Su Tong saw this, the Ruyi furnace behind him hung high above everyone's heads, and a large amount of life breath poured down to repair the bodies of these warriors. You wanna die? Feng Tianhua probably didn't expect that Su Tong actually dared to break into his own Wangxiang sword formation. His expression was horrified, and murderous intent surged around him. With a pinch of his fingers, he saw the world around him turning around, thunder and lightning, and countless terrifying. The lightning struck Su Tong. Unexpectedly, Su Tong finally summoned the Pure Yang sword at this moment. The moment he shook hands with the long sword, Su Tong activated all the phenomena of the day and night at the same time. His body suddenly shone brightly and turned into a Pure Yang body. With his Pure Yang body and the blessing of the Pure Yang sword, Su Tong's aura soared to the extreme for a moment, and the blazing Pure Yang fire was like a white rainbow, tearing apart the sky above his head. He raised his hand and slashed with his sword. Huo 11, who had been strengthened to level 10, was like a giant tiger, slashing towards the void in front of him. The fire of Pure Yang burns out all magic. In an instant, the thunder shatters and the sword light dissipates. One sword is better than thousands of swords. Even Feng Tianhua couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Su Tong's counterattack to be so fierce. He immediately summoned the sword on his waist and resisted the incoming sword force. Clang! Under the collision sound of golden chimes, Feng Tianhua intuitively felt that the sword in his hand was buzzing, and it actually made a series of mournful sounds. When he looked at it, he saw that the gentleman's sword in his hand had been cut with a thumb-sized gap by Su Tong's sword. Kill! At this moment, the Nightmare Cavaliers rushed toward him, and a purple spiritual storm surged out of them. For a moment, Feng Tianhua felt a splitting headache, as if countless densely packed steel needles were piercing his head. But after all, Feng Tianhua was the leader of the Huashan sword. He sensed something was wrong and immediately entered a state of being unable to think without thinking. In this state, Feng Tianhua's eyes were empty and everything was based on instinct. He completely gave up on his five senses. It all depends on this sixth awareness to control the body. At this moment, he is equivalent to a blind, deaf, puppet without touch, smell, or taste, but precisely because of this, Feng Tianhua's combat effectiveness has soared to another level. I saw the long sword in his hand shake. The sky sword, the earth sword, the wind sword, and the thunder sword. The four swords in the formation returned to his side at the same time. As the long sword danced in his hand, the four swords were swung at the same time, like five swords. One, yet seemingly divided into five. Even those who were watching the battle in the distance felt disdain for Feng Tianhua's character, but seeing this now, they had to sincerely sigh, what a good swordsmanship. Your Highness, it's time to fire. Seeing Su Tong and Feng Tianhua fighting on the Yuankai chariot in the distance, Dezhou immediately suggested to Yeliki that he should take advantage of this opportunity to directly raise the mountains and forests ahead to the ground. No. However, Yeliki shook his head, as if he was not worried at all. He turned his eyes and saw the little eunuch holding the fruit plate at the side. He waved and called the little eunuch in front of him and picked off a piece of the fruit plate. Throw a grape into your mouth. Why are you so anxious? Isn't it better to let them bite dogs? Just blow him up like this. That will give him an advantage. Ken. Dijo frowned upon hearing this, feeling that such an opportunity would be gone if he missed it. But Yeliki seemed to see what he was worried about and sneered, the vitality cannon couldn't kill him originally, but Feng Tianhua is so cunning. Seeing that we take action, he will definitely not fight with Yang Hong again. Instead, he will let Yang Hong escape opportunity. After saying that, he spit out the grape seeds in his mouth and continued, let him escape. Don't forget, my uncle is still waiting for him in the back mountain. When Dijo heard this, the awkward feeling in his heart suddenly disappeared. Thinking about it, King Xiao came all the way here just to kill Yang Hong himself. He definitely would not let him escape. Why should he try to steal the limelight from the king at this time? On the contrary, it is not beautiful. Bang bang bang. Just hearing the sound of swords, Feng Tianhua actually charged into the army. With the sword in his hand and the help of 4 magic weapons, it was like a god descending to earth. In an instant, more than 10 Dream Demon cavalry blocking the front were killed. Name. You guys keep rushing forward, I'll take care of everything. Su Tong roared and faced Feng Tianhua. The Chunyang sword seemed to be fast and slow, 1 against 5. If Feng Tianhua's sword was extremely fast, then Su Tong's sword was extremely slow. He only had the basic prop card of Tai Chi sword technique, but the combination of Tai Chi sword and pure Yang sword chi was perfect. Su Tong took this opportunity to carefully taste the mystery of Tai Chi sword technique, and then evolved more swords. Law. Gradually, the wonderful feeling just before came over again, and the Yinhu behind Su Tong roared. For a moment, he seemed to be blessed with a feeling of spiritual bliss, and the sword in Su Tong's hand became lighter and lighter. The two of them were going back and forth, and in an instant they had more than 100 moves at their disposal. However, Ji Zhou and the others had already changed their direction and charged towards Feng Tianhua again. Realizing that Feng Tianhua seemed to be in a passive state, a cold light flashed through his empty eyes. He swung the gentleman's sword, and the 4 swords of heaven, earth, wind, and thunder flew around and turned into countless sword rains. Little fatty, blow him up for me. Realizing Feng Tianhua's thoughts, Su Tong no longer held back. With the thought, his second spirit came out of his body. The little fat man patted his belly and jumped up. The difference from before was that there were only 2 thunder drums behind the little fat man, but now there were 3. With his fleshy little fist, he beat the drums. Hit the thunder drum behind you. Boom. The whole sky seemed to sink all of a sudden, making a loud noise. Immediately afterwards, everyone's eyes widened as they watched a barrel-thick purple light tear through the void and hit Feng Tianhua directly. Purple sky divine thunder. Second soul. When everyone saw this scene, their jaws almost dropped, and they didn't even know where to focus their attention. As we all know, the Zixiao divine thunder is Longhu Mountain's special skill. It is a teaching suppressing technique that can only be practiced by those who are given the surname Zhang. How could Yang Hong know this thunder technique? What makes people even more confused is the appearance of the second soul. The second soul technique is a mysterious Taoist method. The soul leaves the body and can kill enemies thousands of miles away. But this kind of magic is already a secret of Taoism. It has not been seen in the world for hundreds of years. Today, their eyes are opened. Feng Tianhua also didn't expect Su Tong to have such a trump card, and instinctively called for the 4 swords to gather in a straight line to block his head. Boom! A dull loud noise made people's hearts tremble. Feng Tianhua himself was thrown away, a mouthful of blood spurted out, and his consciousness was separated from the helpless state. Seeing Su Tong coming to kill with a sword, Feng Tianhua's face turned pale. Change, immediately waved his hand, and the 4 divine swords flew towards Su Tong like a meteor. Well done. Su Tong shouted loudly when he saw this. He drew a circle with the pure yang sword in his hand, and a gravitational force was generated for a moment. He pulled and pulled the sword blade against the Thunder God sword. With a shake of the sword, it hit the other three divine swords. Flying, but the Thunder God sword was caught in Su Tong's hand. Zitsize. The divine sword fell into his hand and immediately emitted a dark blue arc of electricity, trying to break free from Su Tong's hand. Seeing that this sword contained the power of thunder, Su Tong couldn't help but secretly rejoiced in his heart. What a slap in the face, bah, if it falls into my hands anyway, you can't even think about running away. With just a flick of his finger, the dragon beaming talisman flew out and directly wrapped the sword tightly. Then he threw it to the little fat man above his head. It's a gift for you. It matches your attributes. The little fat man grabbed the Thunder God sword, and his chubby little face was almost laughing to the back of his head. Not to mention how happy he was, he immediately opened his mouth and swallowed the God sword, intending to use the power of thunder in his body to erase it. The spiritual mark on the sword. Seeing that he had been defeated and had lost the Zhensek divine sword, Feng Tianhua turned pale for a moment, roared, then gathered the rest of the divine soldiers and turned around to leave. Feng Tianhua was defeated. Everyone looked at Feng Tianhua's retreating figure, feeling somewhat unable to accept this result. Not to mention his character, he is the swordsman of the martial arts world after all. The veteran who has been famous for many years actually lost to a rising star. However, this also made everyone more confused as to what sect Yang Hong came from. He is full of pure Yang energy, clearly like the Nine Yang true monarch, but he also knows the talisman, Taoism, and Buddhist magical powers. Now he even knows the Zixiao divine thunder in Longhu Mountain. I have seen many schools of thought, but I have never seen him so knowledgeable and talented. Little did he know that at this moment, in the woods nearby, Zhang Yishan's expression was even more bizarre. Of course, he would not easily believe Su Tong's words, but it could be proved that Su Tong was indeed the chosen one recorded in the sect. But he never dreamed that Su Tong would master the Zixiao divine thunder so quickly. You must know that Zixiao Shenli, if it were me, it would take me a year to understand it before I could be considered a small success. It's strange. This kid's second soul looks like my differentiated mind nerve from Longhu Mountain. Zhang Yishan was even more unsure about the existence of the little fat man. Little did they know that this second soul method was originally taught to Su Tong by their Taoist master Lingxiu of Longhu Mountain. Although this miraculous skill had gone through many changes, the sect had simplified it from complexity to simplicity, but its roots remained unchanged. Therefore, Zhang Yishan now began to be greatly shaken by Su Tong's previous words. Fire! Seeing Feng Tianhua's defeat, Dizhou no longer had any scruples. With a command, several bright lights spurted out from the vitality chariot. Rumble, rumble. In an instant, the entire world was illuminated by strong light and turned into a world of black and white. Bucket-sized energy cannonballs fell around Su Tong and others, and with a huge roar, the surrounding mountains and forests were turned into a piece of gravel. Gather! When Su Tong saw this, he quickly recalled Ji Zhou and others to him. The flying dragon flag in their hands fluttered in the wind, making bursts of dragon roaring sounds. Along with the flying dragon's long roar, Ji Zhou and others found that the golden light on their bodies became more and more brilliant, and their bodies seemed to be gushing out with endless strength. This is Su Tong's activation of Fi Longqi's second active skill, the will to trap. Active skill 2, the will to trap. After consuming 1000 script points, after activation, all allies under the blessing of flying dragon armor will gain bloodthirsty, madness and other effects. Inspired by the will to trap the enemy, the auras of the cavalry became even more manic. At this time, an unexpected scene appeared for everyone. They saw the dragon flag in Su Tong's hand pointing at the northern barbarian pursuers behind him, the ambition to trap the enemy, life or death, follow me to kill. Infinite script killing. Author, Guo Shui Gan Xiao. Chapter 964. Madman, this guy is simply a madman. Su Tong's operation immediately surprised everyone. Feng Tianhu has been defeated and the sword formation has dispersed. Yang Hong also grabbed the Huashan Thunder God sword. It can be said to be a great victory. Shouldn't he run at this time? Why did he rush back towards the northern barbarian army behind him? It's so arrogant. This guy really thinks he is invincible. Everyone looked at Su Tong leading the charge, and they all blamed him for being too arrogant, but there was a strong shock in their hearts. Only 300 cavalrymen dared to fight against tens of thousands of northern barbarian elites with vitality chariots behind them. The mayflies shook the trees, but they did not lose the blood of men. Ha ha ha, crazy, crazy, this guy is just asking for death, kill them all. Yeliki looked at the scene in front of him, and his expression became even more exciting for a moment, as if he was mocking wildly, but the eunuch holding the fruit plate on the side had already noticed Yeliki's uneasy palms, tightly grasping his robe. Dong 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 dong. The war drums sounded, and the 3 flags of green, red, and yellow on the Yuankai chariot were waved, and the army behind them was ordered to form an array. Kill, kill, kill. The army was divided into 3, and the 2 cavalry formed a rainbow-like team. They charged quickly from the left to the right, trying to surround Su Tong and others. The army in the middle even raised their shields and supported them in the battle formation. Above, the breath is like smoke rising straight into the sky. Da-da-da-da. The thumb-thick iron chain rotated with the winch, causing the belly armor of the Yuankai chariot to split, revealing 3 bronze mirrors. The large amount of Yuankai in the Yuankai divine furnace gathered into a stream of spiritual light, which shone on the bronze mirrors. There seemed to be finely carved talisman marks on a bronze mirror. After being blessed by spiritual light, these talisman marks were refracted into a piece of talisman light and illuminated the bodies of these elite northern barbarians. The elite northern barbarians who had been blessed by the talisman light had their auras increase sharply, and the muscles on each person's body bulged, and their strength rose to a higher level in an instant. This vitality chariot is indeed the most important treasure of the Yuankai divine section. Its ingenious mechanism layout even combines many talismans and spells, which can be called contemporary technology and ruthless work. Kill. At this moment, Su Tong's men and horses had already rushed in front of him. Su Tong was holding the pure yang sword in his hand. Between the horses, his aura had completely integrated with the charging people around him. The power of the men and horses was one, and the momentum was like a tiger descending from a mountain. Clang! The pure yang sword was swung, and the light on the sword flickered. The dazzling sword light slid into the air like a half-moon sword light. With one sword, it penetrated the shield and armor in front of it. The sword light went straight for 100 meters, forcefully a crack opened in the barbarian army. In an instant, the nightmare cavalry roared in, and the terrifying nightmare struck the barbarian army like a depth bomb, causing the thousands of barbarian soldiers in front of them to see a burst of darkness and severe stinging pain, instantly causing their formation to become chaotic. Kill. Ge Zhou and others were caught in the middle by the nightmare cavalry, but it did not affect their ability to kill the enemy. With the help of their horsepower, the blade in their hands was like a scimitar of death, quickly harvesting the heads of the barbarians in front of them. Blood splattered on their faces, and the burning sensation made the bloodlust in everyone's eyes become even more fanatical. Bang 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 bang. In the dark army, outsiders could not even see the traces of Su Tong and others inside, but the sound of the clash of swords became more and more intense. Rumble, rumble. The second soul in the sky beat the thunder drum behind him. Under the bursts of thunder that was like the roar of the sky, a thunder and lightning split from the void. In an instant, the sky and the earth darkened. Countless silver thunder snakes split from the sky and struck at the barbarian. In the army. Dong 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 dong. But the sound of war drums suddenly changed at this moment, and Su Tong and others suddenly became cheerful. The originally dark barbarian warriors quickly dispersed and formed a long dragon-like team. After avoiding their charge, the 3,000 cavalry on the left and right suddenly dispersed and lined up. The formation also violently charged forward, and at the same time, they threw out the spears in their hands one by one. Tisk tisk tisk. Spear after spear made a sound of breaking through the air, and shot down like a rain of arrows. Su Tong's expression changed, he pulled up the reins, and led his team to narrowly avoid being shot from the side. But there were still several nightmare hussars who were directly penetrated by spears and nailed to the ground. These spears were stained with the murderous intent gathered by the army. Even the nightmare cavalry couldn't bear it and was nailed to the ground, letting out painful wails. Immediately afterwards, more than a dozen barbarian soldiers pounced on him and chopped them into pieces with random swords. Su Tong found that the aura of the surrounding barbarian troops changed rapidly as the formation changed. Huge blood surged from these warriors and merged with the battle formation, as if a big snake and python emerged from the sky. Although he has invincible power, but if he strikes with a sword, he can only kill one or two people. This is not because the strength of these northern barbarian warriors has improved, but because they methodically maintain the rhythm of the formation, forming a strange aura that prevents their swordsmanship from achieving the maximum killing effect. It's a long snake formation. Some veterans who were watching the battle still recognized this formation and couldn't help but sigh. On the battlefield, the changes in the military formation are endless. Even the land gods can't hope to change the situation by themselves. Anyone with experience on the battlefield would know that Yang Hong was in big trouble when he looked at the formation. The Earth Immortal was the best in the world, but it did not mean that he could control the battlefield. Otherwise, how could Su Lai, the second best person in the world, only dare to sit in court? Don't dare to take action rashly. Dijo. Seeing that the battle formation was in effect, Yelaki's eyes shone brightly, he turned around and called to Dijo, pulled out the divine sword Mengtai and handed it to him. I will make you the general of the Central Army, give you the tiger flag, and let me guard the three armies. Kill this thief. With the addition of officials and nobles, Dijo can mobilize the army to blend with his own aura. Respect His Majesty's will. Dijo hurriedly took the Mengtai sword, but when the magic weapon dropped, it made a harsh buzzing sound. It seemed that the magic weapon was still dissatisfied with the defeat of Dijo, a pig teammate, last time, which made Dijo Chiu looked embarrassed, and hurriedly raised the divine weapon above his head. With the power of the divine sword today, the Yuan Chi Shen sect will surely be supported by tens of millions of Yuan Chi in the future. Only after Dijo promised a favor did Meng Taijian return to normal. Your Highness, wait for the good news from me, Dijo said, turned around and jumped off the Vitality Chariot, and flew into the head of the long snake formation. He held the Mengtai sword high in his hand, and the Vitality Chariot above his head suddenly poured out again. The billowing vitality is like a starry sky splashing in the military formation, blessing the barbarian warriors, making them faster and more powerful. Interesting, this thing is really similar to my great son Ruyi Furnace. When Su Tong saw this, he couldn't help but wonder if there was some special relationship between the Yuan Chi divine sect and Yan Shu, otherwise the magical power technique would have so many similarities with his own Yan Shu. Yang Hong. Come and fight me again. Dichu raised the Mengtai sword high and led a long snake formation behind him to kill Su Tong. He saw that the formation was endlessly changing, including surround, choke, shoot, break, and so on. Seeing this, Su Tong tightened the reins in his hands. A group of cavalry rushed into the formation, rushing left and right, and Yu Daiku collided with each other. How can you show courage when you have a defeated general? Su Tong let out a long roar, held the hilt of the sword with both hands, and swept through the army with one strike, aiming at Dichu and beheading him head-on. Boom! In an instant, the two magic weapons of Mengtai and Chunyang made a harsh buzzing sound, and saw fire splashing everywhere, burning their eyes. The two magic weapons seemed to be mortal enemies at this moment, entangled with each other. Ha ha ha, you ignorant child, do you really think that you are invincible and can control the battlefield? How can you control the battlefield in the world? Dichu's eyes were as hot as fire, and he was slashing wildly with the Mengtai sword in both hands. He was blessed by the infinite vitality of the Vitality battleship behind him. His moves did not have any fancy skills. They were all about fighting with all his strength. He did not look like the leader of a sect, nor did he look like the leader of a religion. Like a fierce warrior fighting on the battlefield. Su Tong's expression remained unchanged, and he turned the Tai Chi sword in his hand, guarding tightly, and the little fat man above his head kept hitting the battle formation with thunderbolts. But at this moment, the barbarian army's battle formation was already as powerful as a rainbow, and the murderous auras soaring into the sky could actually make Xiaopang's thunder spells ineffective. Thunders rolled down one after another, and they could only kill one or two barbarian soldiers at a time. Compared with the huge base of the barbarian army, this casualty is almost negligible. Hey, I'm passive. If we continue to fight like this, I'm afraid Yang Hong will have no choice but to abandon his troops and flee. Everyone hid in the distance and watched the battle. They couldn't help but sigh when they saw this, feeling that Yang Hong would have to pay for his arrogance this time. Hey, I'm afraid he can't leave. Look over there. Someone suddenly let out a burst of sneer, raised his hand and pointed, and there was a large red falcon on Luyuepi in the distance. At first glance, this falcon looked like a prairie kestrel, but if you look closely, you will find that this falcon is a red falcon. The kestrel's body is as big as a golden eagle. The kestrel hovered on the top of Luyuepi mountain, making no sound. If someone hadn't accidentally seen it, no one would have noticed it. Red-robed Falcon King. When everyone saw the big falcon clearly, their hearts beat violently. The northern barbarians enjoy raising falcons, and there are many famous falcons. For example, the jade claw that Su Tong and the others encountered when they first entered the script world is the noble among falcons. But compared with the giant falcon in front of me, it is not at the same level. This is a falcon king that is rare for 100 years. It has even been cultivated into a monster, and its owner is the third in the world who is known to everyone in the world. Xiaolishan. Since the giant falcon appears, Xiaolishan must be not far away. Thinking of this, everyone's scalp suddenly went numb. Xiaolishan actually came in person. He was not only the third best in the world, but also the backer of the northern barbarians. It was only because of his presence that the northern barbarians had a century-old national destiny. Could it be that this person appears because he wants to fight to the death with Tiangan? If it really reaches that level, the world will inevitably be in chaos. If it is serious, the dark age of the Wuhu War will even reappear. Just when everyone's hearts were feeling cold, a soft sound of Buddha's trumpet suddenly came, calming everyone's panic. Amitabha, almsgiver Xiao has been here for a long time. Since he has not entered the game at this moment, I am afraid he has no intention of fighting a bloody battle with Tiangan. You don't need to worry too much about your thoughts. When everyone heard the sound, they turned around and saw two old monks approaching from the shadows. It turned out to be Guzang, the divine monk of the East China Sea. Next to Guzang was an old monk who was older than Guzang. When everyone took a look, they were even more surprised. My jaw dropped. It turned out to be Master Minghai, the current abbot of Zen Buddhism. It turned out to be two divine monks. Seeing the two divine monks arriving, everyone felt at ease. Not to mention Master Minghai, the ancient Tibetan divine monk is a well-known good man in the world. He has always valued peace. His strength is to persuade people to make peace with each other. He really has a bodhisattva heart. As long as you don't talk meanly and mention the fact that he was beaten by Zhang Xian 16 years ago in front of him, even if you slap him, he may not fight back. With these two bodhisattvas in charge, they could sit back and watch the show without any worries. At that moment, everyone rushed to meet them and gathered around the two living bodhisattvas. One person pointed to the battlefield below, and saw that Su Tong's side had completely turned into a headwind. The long snake formation gradually closed in, and his cavalry began to lose the advantage of charging, and the casualties began to increase. The two divine monks are here. Are they here for this divine lord of martial arts? Gu Zhang clasped his hands together and nodded. Ran yet? Is it also for the innate divine fetus? Another person asked. That is to say, Gu Zhang's good temper can withstand the questioning of these cats and dogs. If it were anyone else, he would have easily killed these guys who want to hide in the dark and fish in troubled waters. No, I came here today just to have another debate with Marquis Shenwu. As soon as Gu Zhang said these words, everyone immediately looked at each other. Some people shook their heads and said, I'm afraid that Master's visit will be in vain. I think today is the death anniversary of the Shenwu Marquis. In the end, I can only blame him. Too much strength is easy to break, and rash progress is greedy for merit. Obviously, everyone was no longer optimistic about the sudden rise of Shenwu Hao, thinking that he might just be a meteor in the sky, shining brightly for an instant and then disappearing from everyone's sight. However, when Gu Zhang heard this, he shook his head and said, the poor monk dare not agree. This battle has just begun. What? Everyone was shocked and thought it was Gu Zhang who was preparing to protect Marquis Shenwu. Just as he was about to speak, a shocking sound suddenly came from the woods on the side. Head, here we come. Gao Zhou was riding on a war horse, his eyes glowing fiercely, and he saw a group of cavalry behind him forming a torrent and rushing out. This surprised everyone. Looking at the high-flying Tiangan flag, even Yeliki was shocked. Why are there still ambushes? This was something no one expected. Everyone focused their attention on Su Tong and his group, thinking that Su Tong was greedy for success and led the team to the west. But who would have thought that there would be an ambush following Su Tong and the others? Quick, change formation. Seeing this cavalry approaching the battlefield unnoticed and charging towards Dichu's long snake formation, Yeliki's expression suddenly changed and he hurriedly gave orders to change the formation. The most feared thing about the one-word long snake formation is that it should be coordinated inside and outside. Once the formation is broken, the army will be cut into several sections in an instant. When the time comes, the army will be defeated and there will be no way to recover. Dong 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 dong. The rapid sound of drum beating made Dichu's expression darken, and he was about to command the army to change direction, but their movements were still too slow. Gao Zhou took the lead and raised his hand to summon a large number of walking corpses, which was unstoppable. Fearing death, he rushed into the barbarian formation. These walking corpses were chopped to the ground by the barbarian army in a few seconds. However, with an explosion, the corpses were torn apart, and a large amount of poisonous smoke was emitted for a while. In order to achieve the best effect, Gao Zhou specially led his team quietly. He changed his direction silently and rushed downward from the upwind direction. At this moment, the poisonous smoke also followed the direction of the wind and quickly took effect on the barbarian army. All of a sudden, these barbarian warriors, who were as strong as cattle, began to vomit heavily, and some even fell to the ground and howled in pain. With the interference of the poisonous smoke, Gao Zhou's troops had already charged into the long snake formation, punching a hole from front to back of the formation. Kill out. Su Tong took the opportunity to join the team with Gao Zhou, and together they formed a long snake formation. Quick, retreat, retreat. Seeing that the formation was broken, Dizhou hurriedly shouted and ordered the barbarian troops to retreat, make space, and reorganize their formation. But at this moment another team suddenly rushed out from behind them. Rumble, rumble. The war horses trampled on the ground and made a deafening roar. I saw Gu Zibai holding Wu Go in both hands and flying down with another cavalry. With one stroke of Wugo, he chopped off the head of a barbarian warrior. As the cavalry behind them raised their spears, with the power of the charge, the spears penetrated several barbarians directly, turning them into candied haws. At this moment, the originally divided army was penetrated by 2 cavalrymen. The horses trampled the corpses on the ground into pulp. The army was defeated irreversibly. Su Tong had always said that his team was a bait. After getting the news that Yeliki and others were leading troops to hunt him down, he had asked Gao Zhou and Gu Zibai to lead the team slowly towards Zaiquan. In fact, it was converged towards yourself. With Li Bo, a natural mountain forest expert, relying on the power of nature, the dense mountain forests along the way became their best camouflage. With the help of Li Bo, the complicated route became smoother. Appeared here unnoticed by taking a detour. At this moment, the soldiers who followed Su Tong and the others on the expedition seemed to have been given blood, waving their swords and spears, frantically harvesting this hard-won military exploits. In a moment, Dizhou realized that he could no longer control the army. After all, he is not a real general. Faced with this difficult situation, he is completely confused and does not know how to further recover the losses. If he were replaced by an experienced general, he would definitely make the army gather quickly and form a defensive formation. Retreat step by step, relying on the vitality chariot to minimize losses. It's a pity that their general is a layman like Dizhou. Without effective command, the collapsed army is nothing more than a pile of loose sand and moving military achievements. How so? Yeliki looked at the defeated army below, his face was red with suppressed anger, and he wanted to kill someone. He glanced around him, only to find that the eunuch who was standing next to him was already hiding behind with a fruit plate in his arms. There was only one disciple of Yuan Kai-shen cult beside him, who was looking at him with an innocent face. Idiot, get out of here. Yeliki found someone to vent his anger on and kicked the person away. Then he punched the fence of the chariot and shouted angrily, fire the cannon, blow them up. For a moment, the disciples of the Yuan-Kai god sect on the battleship looked at each other. The army below had been defeated, but there were still thousands of northern barbarian warriors. If the explosion continued, these thousands of northern barbarian warriors would be buried with them. They cannot afford this crime. Seeing that these fools didn't listen to his orders, Yeliki was about to go berserk. At this time, a high-pitched eagle chirped, filling the sky with alarm, and a soul-piercing power seemed to ripple across the entire battlefield. The originally scattered army, in the sound of the eagle's cry, the morale of the originally defeated army was rekindled in an instant. Even without command, they quickly gathered into a group. That is. Su Tong took a closer look and saw a huge red falcon in the sky turning into a red shadow and rushing straight towards the little fat man. Xiao Pang also sensed the danger, but seeing that the opponent was just an animal hand, he raised his hand and summoned a bolt of lightning to strike at him. What was surprising was that this huge kestrel, which was as big as a golden eagle, was completely indifferent to the thunder. Frightened, the sharp claws opened, and a strange evil light rose from them, which actually shattered thunder to pieces with one blow. It's my uncle. Seeing this Falcon King, Yeliki's eyes shone. As he looked around, his pupils suddenly tightened. He saw that the Mengtai sword in Dichu's hand seemed to have been summoned by some means, and it was directly taken from Dichu's hand. He broke free and turned into a sword rainbow that circled in mid-air and landed lightly on a slender palm. Coming. Su Tong's heart was frightened. He looked back and saw a middle-aged man in front of the woods, holding a Mengtai sword. He looked sideways and squinted towards him. The corner of his mouth moved slightly, but his voice was earth-shattering. Yang Hong, here I come. There are quite a lot of fighting battlefields in this plot, so it is not convenient to publish them separately. I will publish them together, so it is a little late. Please forgive me.